Chapter 181, Escorting. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Yan Luo issued a long and soundless shout. After that, the fluctuating soul flames in its eye sockets became stable. It looked around for a moment. Then, it lay down in silence. Suddenly, it seemed as if the red substance in the dark water around it had been subjected to some kind of an attraction force. The substance then came together, and got merged into its body. Yan Luo absorbed the energy of the dark water at a much faster speed than before. The red color of the dark water puddle had decreased greatly after a while. A splashing sound was heard from the surface of the water. Then, a white silhouette jumped out of it with a splash. The silhouette hovered in midair for a short while. Then, it fell on the shore gracefully. It was none other than Yan Luo. The soul flames in its eyes were emitting faint blue rays. The texture of its figure had become smoother than before. Its entire body, especially its right arm and skull, were emitting a sparkling and translucent color. The sparkle increased gradually, and its body became white like a fine jade. The bone armor on Yan Luo's body was no longer tattered. In fact, a faint white fluorescence had appeared on the surface of the perfectly shaped armor. However, the white bone blade in its hand was missing. It had been replaced by a long and white bone spear. The tip of the spear was emitting waves of cold light. Even Yan Luo's aura had become stronger than before. Yan Luo looked around, and saw nearly 100 skeletons roaming around the puddle. It then drew back its vision. The other skeletons prostrated on the ground in respect the moment they saw Yan Luo. The soul flames flickered in Yan Luo's eyes as it looked at the skeletons in front of it. Then, it opened its mouth, and issued an invisible brainwave message. The skeletons stood from the ground as they felt it. Yan Luo turned around, and looked in a certain direction. Then, it started to walk in that direction. The group of skeletons started to follow it. That delegation of skeletons then walked ahead under Yan Luo's leadership. Inside a stone chamber in the Green-Tooth Tribe Palace, Shi Mu sat beside a table. He was muttering to himself. It seemed as if he was thinking about something. Suddenly, he stood up, and hurriedly departed from the stone chamber. After a short while, Shi Mu returned to the stone chamber with a large rolled-up sheepskin in his hand. This sheepskinned paper was covered with a layer of dust. It was a rough map of the wasteland of the barbarian race. He had borrowed it from Min Tu. Shi Mu walked into the drawing room. He looked around in order to find an empty space in that place. He took few steps forward. He then spread the map carefully on the ground. The map was nearly 10 feet long. It was made up of sheepskin that had been sewed together. Most of the lines on the map were drawn in black. Only a few regions were marked with blue, yellow, and red lines. Blue lines represented rivers, yellow lines represented mountains, and the red lines represented the dangerous areas. Shi Mu's eyes stopped over the holy mountain on the map. He looked at the location of the 4 big tribes of vicious barbarians. There was a wide black line that had nearly sealed the way to reach the human race from the holy mountain. Shi Mu wrinkled his brows. He then shifted his gaze towards the location of the 4 tribes of the peaceful barbarians. An unknown period of time passed. Shi Mu finally relaxed his brows as a new route appeared in his mind. This route would take much more time in the wasteland than the previous route. But, most of it was surrounded by the areas within the sphere of the 4 tribes of peaceful barbarians. So, this route was a lot safer. Shi Mu closed his eyes, and memorized the new route. After that, he collected the map. He then walked out with the map. After a quarter of an hour, in some other chamber of the Green-Tooth Tribe Palace, Priest Yanya was sitting in the master chair with a smile on his face. Shi Mu was sitting on the chair next to him. I didn't expect that warrior Shi Mu would possess so much understanding of the secret totem art of the barbarian race. You were able to comprehend it in such a short period of time. Moreover, you removed the curse in one go. It can be said that you're a rare genius. Priest Yanya smiled and spoke. Priest Yanya praises me too much. It was only because the high priest showed me how to do this. This was the easiest way. I was luckily able to remove the curse. I also want to thank Priest Yanya for helping me. Shi Mu forced a smile, and cupped his hands in greeting to thank Priest Yanya. No need to be formal, warrior Shi Mu. I received the man's trust and loyalty. Tell me, have you come here since you wish to leave the Holy Land? Priest Yanya waved his hand and asked. Yes. But, I've also come to thank you, and say goodbye, Priest Yanya. Shi Mu nodded and said. Warrior Shi Mu, I've just found out that the priest of the fierce snake tribe, perhaps. Priest Yanya muttered to himself. It seemed as if he wanted to say something, but had stopped himself. Thank you very much for warning me, Priest Yanya. I'll consider this, and would be careful. Shi Mu's vision flashed. He then nodded and said. But, he didn't say anything about the route that he had thought in his mind. Well, in that case, I won't say anything more. This is a token of my Green-Tooth tribe. This token will help you move without any obstruction if you pass through the areas of the 4 tribes of the peaceful barbarians. Priest Yanya thought for a while. He then took out a green-colored bone token from his bosom, and handed it over to Shi Mu. Thank you so much, Priest Yanya. Shi Mu felt happy in his mind. He got up, and put a hand on his chest. He then put the green token into his bosom. Both of them continued to chat for the next few hours. Then, Shi Mu bid goodbye and left. He didn't go to his stone room after he came out of the palace hall. Instead, he walked out of the huge door of the palace. He was going to leave the barbarian wasteland. So, he intended to go to the market in the vicinity of the Holy Land. He went to buy some black animal hide magic charms. After all, the magic charms made on animal hides were far more effective than the ordinary paper charms. An hour later, Shi Mu reappeared on the mountain that led to the palace of the Green-Tooth tribe with a bundle of leather behind his back. Suddenly, a burst of sounds of the horse's hoofs was heard from a nearby place. It was neither too fast nor too slow. Shi Mu's ears moved. He then turned towards the roadside. But, he didn't take it seriously, and continued to move forward. A group of more than 10 cavalry soldiers from the Crowhorn tribe went past him. Suddenly, a barbarian leading the group made a signal with his hand. And, the whole troop became motionless in the blink of an eye. The barbarian man leading the group turned around his horse. He was a few steps away from Shi Mu. He then jumped down from the horse, sized Shi Mu up, and said, I'm Wu Ji, the general of the Crowhorn tribe. May I ask if your excellency is the messenger of the human race Shi Mu? Yes. I'm Shi Mu. May I ask the respected general, what's the matter? Shi Mu looked at the big barbarian man in front of him, and asked doubtfully. The barbarian man was more than 30 years old. He had dense eyebrows and wide mouth. He carried a red big axe on his back. It could clearly be said from his aura that he had reached the initial level of the Xian Tian realm. Haha! I was going back to the tribe with the troops. Priest Yanya has sent this messenger to deliver some news to you. I wish to escort warrior Shi Mu during your journey. It's the least of an effort. So, I was heading towards the palace of the Green-Tooth tribe to look for you. But, I didn't expect that I'd meet you on the way. Wu Ji laughed heartily. He then said. Thank you so much, respected general. Let's go back, and sort this out. Shi Mu felt happy in his heart as he heard this. The Crowhorn tribe had taken the same route that he had scheduled in advance. So, there was nothing better than having the other party escort him. Well, then let's go ahead. We'll join you under the foot of the mountain in half an hour, right? Wu Ji spoke in a straightforward manner. That's settled then. Shi Mu replied with a smile. Wu Ji didn't say anything else. He then turned around to mount his horse. After that, he started to advance towards the mountain top. The other soldiers followed after him. They all soon disappeared into the distance. Shi Mu looked in their direction. His vision flashed, and moved in the direction of the Green Tooth Tribe palace. Shi Mu left from the palace of Green Tooth Tribe. Now, he had one more leather bag on his back. It was bulging with the skin of the three-headed ominous python that he had killed. He rode down from the mountain top on the back of the David's deer. Shi Mu saw Wu Ji's horse resting and reorganizing near the barracks at the foot of the White Horse Mountain half an hour later. He noticed that the entire cavalry consisted of totem warriors. There were 3 strong totem warriors apart from an initial level Xian Tian warrior Wu Ji. One of them was a Ho Tian warrior on the consummate stage, and the other 2 were late-stage Ho Tian warriors. Warrior Shi Mu, it's getting dark. We should start our journey as quickly as possible. There's a road ahead, which goes through the territory under the control of the Red Tide Scorpions. We must leave before it gets dark. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we would have to delay for one day. Wu Ji looked at Shi Mu and said. All right, let's go. Shi Mu nodded. He vaguely remembered the map from the Holy Mountain to the Crowhorn tribe. He'd have to pass through the beautiful Gauze tribe and the Green Tooth tribe. Moreover, he'd have to pass through a red-marked area, a dangerous place, in order to reach the beautiful Gauze tribe. Presumably, it was the influence range of the Red Tide Scorpion. Wu Ji laughed out loud. He then turned around to mount his horse, took the lead, and rushed towards a distant place. Shi Mu and the barbarian cavalry followed after him. 5 days later. It was night time in the wasteland. Shi Mu lay inside a leather tent. He was gazing at the roof in a daze. He couldn't fall asleep as he was thinking about something. Wu Ji and his troops had been exceptionally enthusiastic towards him in the past 5 days. The camping hadn't gone without good wine and roasted meat even on a single day. Every place on this journey had its own history. Wu Ji would give a detailed introduction of the history and rumors related to the tribe whose territory they would pass through. Wu Ji even answered all of Shi Mu's queries. And, this had greatly helped to broaden Shi Mu's knowledge. However, their speed was quite slow. Moreover, they would often deviate from the already fixed route. Shi Mu tried to ask Wu Ji about it several times, but he kept on giving all kind of excuses like the presence of some kind of poisonous insects, the water level being low, or the shortage of water on the route. So, the route became more and more indistinguishable to Shi Mu. Therefore, more and more doubts started to rise in his mind. Shi Mu had studied about the map of this piece of wasteland. He thought and felt that Wu Ji had given various excuses in order to take the long route. Shi Mu felt that he wanted to prolong his journey on purpose. So, Shi Mu could no longer sleep. He quietly pulled open the curtain of the tent, and took a look towards the distance. He stood across numerous tents. Wu Ji's tent was brightly lit up at the moment. 4 vague shadows of people drinking and chatting could be seen inside the tent. Shi Mu's tent was surrounded by the tents of people of the Crowhorn tribe. Wu Ji had said that it was to protect him since he hailed from the human race. The barbarian people liked to drink wine. Wu Ji and his 3 men were no exception. The 4 men would drink every night. The black light on the totem on his chest flashed as a thought crossed his mind. Suddenly, cold energies flowed out of his totem, and entered into the veins in his body. Shi Mu felt a tearing pain in his entire body. Then, layers of black scales started to appear on his skin. Chapter 182, Strike First and Gain the Upper Hand. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Shi Mu's senses became exceptionally keen as he transformed into the beast form. The voice of Wu Ji and that of the 3 Ho Tian warriors started to transmit clearly into his ears. However, they were mostly discussing about the internal affairs of the Crowhorn tribe. So, there was nothing worth listening for Shi Mu. Shi Mu had to give up for the time being since he couldn't remain transformed into the beast for a long time. He continued to spend a little time in eavesdropping to Wu Ji and the others every night for 3 days. But, he didn't hear anything unusual. In the meantime, the cavalry passed through the core region of the Wu Luo tribe. It wasn't too far away from the influence range of the Green-Tooth tribe. Wu Ji and the other people were overly enthusiastic about themselves during the daytime. But, Shi Mu had a bad premonition about this. 9 days after leaving the holy mountain. It was night. No human footprints could be seen in the area covered with sand and stones in the wasteland. 7 or 8 tents had been arranged in a circle within the radius of 100 feet on the ground. A big bonfire had been ignited on a piece of open land around the tents. Wu Ji and other people had invited Shi Mu in a small bonfire party to celebrate some festival of the barbarian race. Everyone drank wine until the next morning. Then, everybody excused themselves. Dozens of snore sounds were heard. These sounds fell and rose in succession. Shi Mu lay on the ground in the center of a tent. He opened his eyes with a flash of understanding. He then turned over and got up. His mind was exceptionally sober at the moment even though he had drunk a lot of wine. He quietly came out of the tent, and shot a glance at some nearby tents. Suddenly, an idea crossed his mind. He then used his totem power, and bent an ear to listen. His complexion changed after a short while. He then became gloomy. Inside a tent not too far away from Shi Mu. General. Shi Mu had defeated Wu Li, but he has an advanced stage Ho Tian strength at the most. Why did Priest Yi ask Lord Zhagu to undertake this task? A tall and sturdy barbarian said. His face was ruddy as he had drunk a lot of wine. A black rhinoceros totem could be seen on his bare chest. His body was emitting an aura of a consummate level Ho Tian warrior. Zhou Tu, you underestimate him too much. I was present on the scene when he defeated Wu Li in that fight. His final fist had no less than 3,000 or 4,000 kilograms of strength. It would have been hard for even me to deal with it, Wu Ji replied in a low voice. However, his tone was still deep and resounding. What? Zhou Tu and the other 2 late-stage Ho Tian warriors drew a mouthful of air as they heard this. Hehe, you don't need to worry about our Crowhorn tribe. We'll have a great advantage once we draw him to the pointed lake, Wu Ji laughed and said. Hehe, that guy is still sleeping. He doesn't know that this is going to be his last night in this world. An advanced stage Ho Tian totem warrior laughed in an evil manner as he heard his words. Well, everyone speak in low voice. We can't take it lightly. We'll have to wait until tomorrow to reach the pointed lake. Then, Wu Ji stretched out his hand and stopped the 3 confidants while making some silent gesture. Suddenly, a sound was heard from the leather tent behind Wu Ji. A shaft of long and black blade came whooshing from inside it. It split open one side of the tent from the middle into 2, and came chopping down towards the back of his body. The long black blade had appeared in a flash. Wu Ji's complexion changed. He grabbed the hand of the advanced stage Ho Tian warrior, and pulled him towards his back in order to resist. He then scuttled and flew forward like a cheetah. His body transmitted a caca sound at the same time. Then, his body began to inflate. Moreover, a horn emerged on the top of his head. It was as dark as ink. The totem warrior whom Wu Ji had used to protect his back didn't know what was going on. A black blade light came down splitting with a lightning speed. Ah! A scream echoed. Then, real chi was poured into the black meteoric iron blade. It split him into 2 halves from top to bottom with an irresistible force. His blood and internal organs scattered in all directions. Then, Shi Mu entered into the tent from the slit. Raging flames were rising from the black blade in his hand. His hands and neck were covered in black scales. Shi Mu. Wu Ji took out a huge red axe. But, he was startled as he identified the other person. What shocked him more was that the aura emitting out of Shi Mu's body was stronger than his own. There was a fierce expression on Wu Ji's face. He waved the huge red axe towards Shi Mu. A 10 feet long red axon was shot from the edge of the axe. It issued a sharp crying sound. It came chopping towards Shi Mu. The complexions of Zhou Tu and the other Houtian warrior grew pale as they saw Shi Mu's status. After that, a black light flashed from the totems on their chests. Suddenly, both of their arms became thick. Then, curved black horns grew on the top of their heads. The two men grabbed an iron hammer and an iron mace-like weapon. It emitted shadows in layers that went smashing towards Shi Mu. Cold colors flashed in Shi Mu's eyes. Huge flame-ons were emitted from the black blade in his hand. They then forged ahead towards the ons of red axe. Bang! A bursting sound echoed. Then, bursts of dang, dang, sounds were heard. A red light shone as the blade and the axe came in contact with each other, the raging flames and the ons cancelled each other out. Wu Ji took 7 or 8 steps backwards under the gigantic strength. His complexion looked flushed. Meanwhile, Shi Mu's figure rushed towards Zhou Tu with an unimaginable speed. It seemed as if Shi Mu had transformed into a black phantom. Bang! 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 A series of metal striking sound were transmitted. Zhou Tu wielded the hammer in his hand. Then, a dozen or more shadows went smashing towards Shi Mu's body. It swirled his clothes in the air, and exposed the black scales on his body. However, the hammer shadows couldn't do any damage to Shi Mu, except for leaving behind a white scar on his scales. Zhou Tu exposed colors of shock on his face as he saw this. He didn't get any time to react as Shi Mu's figure got transformed into several shadows in a flash. He then swept past his body while leaving a chill in his chest. Zhou Tu lowered his head, and saw a fist-sized blood hole in his chest. The wound was curled up in black cold qi, and didn't leave behind a single drop of blood. The black cold qi was also curled up on Shi Mu's left hand. His hand was covered in black scales. Shi Mu held Zhou Tu's heart in his hand at the moment. It was still throbbing with a plop sound. Qi! Qi! A lousy sound erupted in the space behind Shi Mu. Another Houtian advanced stage warrior waved the iron mace in his hand. It transformed into more than 10 densely packed hammer shadows. They then went smashing towards Shi Mu's head. Shi Mu tossed away Zhou Tu's heart, and it landed right beside its master's feet. But, he didn't move back. Instead, he went forward in a deceiving manner, and stretched out his left hand like a snake. Bang! A loud sound was heard. A dozen or more dancing shadows disappeared in a flash. They didn't leave any trace behind. Then, Shi Mu's left hand grasped the iron mace in a firm hold, and smashed it. The other person had terrified expressions in his eyes. The blade-ons rose up from the black blade as Shi Mu waved his right hand. Then, the blade cut towards the Houtian late-stage totem warrior. The totem warrior issued a loud scream. The blade-on chopped him into 2 halves. Zhou Tu looked at the throbbing heart that lay beside his leg. He wanted to stoop and pick it up. But, his figure stumbled after a few steps, and he fell down on the ground with a bang sound. Then, his body became motionless after it had twitched for a few times. Shi Mu had already killed 3 Houtian totem warriors. But, all of it had happened in 2 or 3 breaths' time. Wu Ji's figure remained steady. His face was filled with frightened and angry colors. But, Shi Mu didn't stop even for a moment. He threw himself towards Wu Ji with a strong force. "Young boy, this is going too far." Wu Ji's arms got covered with muscles as he saw this. The huge red axe in his hand rushed towards Shi Mu in order to behead him. Red moon-shaped arcs appeared, and formed the shape of blade-ons. They then went rolling towards Shi Mu like lightning. Shi Mu's eyes flashed with a cold light in midair. He held his blade in both his hands. The charm characters on the surface of the blade got transformed into 13 blazing blade lights in order to protect his body. Boom! Boom! A burst of rumbling sounds echoed. Raging flames rolled up as the massive blazing blade went over. These raging flames quickly extinguished the axe's shadows. Wu Ji looked shocked. Shi Mu's figure was now within an arm's reach. Then, the blazing huge blade came right into his face to chop it down. Wu Ji wanted to dodge the attack, but couldn't avoid it. He then placed the huge red axe in front of his chest to resist the blade. Clang! An incomprehensible amount of power rushed wildly, and invaded his body. His arms felt numb, and qi and blood churned in his body. The red axe went out flying from his hand. Then, a sparkling and translucent jade-like clenched fist came and smashed into his chest before he could make another move. Wu Ji bellowed and lowered his head. Then, the black horns on his head forged ahead like gigantic black blades. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The sparkling and translucent fist and the bent horns came in contact, and cancelled each other out. But then, a black light flashed on the surface of Shi Mu's fist. A fist-sized black chi came out of it, and quietly fell on his chest. The sound of shattering of bones was heard. A black cavity was formed in Wu Ji's chest as the black chi diffused and opened a wound. Then, his figure trembled and became rigid, as if he was surrounded by ice and snow. The black blade flames in Shi Mu's hand ignited, and went chopping horizontally. A pop sound echoed. Wu Ji's body responded sluggishly, it couldn't defend itself anymore. Suddenly, the black blade chopped him by the waist into two halves. A stream of thin blood got sprinkled everywhere. A fishy smell rose up as his organs slipped out from his body. The other totem warriors of the Crowhorn tribe had also woken up by this time. They rushed towards the tent. They were dumbstruck at what they saw. Then, Shi Mu appeared in front of them like a monster. He waved the black blade in his hand, and beheaded another man. Then, his figure flashed again, and a totem warrior was sent out flying. The barbarian warrior's figure then froze in midair. That body was then suddenly thrown downwards by a force. And, the body turned into pulp as it hit the ground. After a short while, Shi Mu stood by the pile of bodies beside the bonfire. His chest was moving up and down. The flames of the bonfire that shone on his firm face seemed rather gloomy. There wasn't even a single survivor among the 10 or so barbarian men of the Crowhorn tribe. The air was filled with smell of reeking blood, so much so that a person would want to vomit after smelling it. Shi Mu sighed once the expression of determination disappeared from his face. He believed that not everyone among the ordinary totem warriors of the Crowhorn tribe knew how Wu Ji had betrayed him. But, he had to kill them all in order to protect the secret that he had successfully sealed the soul of the three-headed python with the totem technique. It was one of his biggest secrets right now. A lot of trouble would be created if it was to leak out. Moreover, Zhagu had the strength of an earth-ranked warrior. And, Zhagu could follow the footprints, and may try to find Shi Mu. So, his situation would become bad if someone leaked his situation and whereabouts. Shi Mu took some rest at first. After that, he gathered the corpses of the barbarian men. Some of them were likely to carry gold foliage and animal-skinned magic charms. So, he checked them. He also found a beast soul bag from Wu Ji's dead body. Shi Mu wrapped all these things in a cowhide. Bursts of cold on flickered in his eyes as he looked at the bonfire in front of him. After that, his figure moved towards the camp and disappeared. Shi Mu appeared with a 10 feet long block after a while. The block had a large surface area. He brought the blade near the bonfire, and inserted it into the ground. Boom! The entire camp shook with a loud sound. The huge rock stood up like a steel on the round. Its bottom sank several feet deep into the ground. Shi Mu turned over his hand, and pulled out his black blade. He then shook his wrist, and started to carve characters in bold and cursive calligraphy on the surface of the huge rock. A sharp font appeared on the surface of the huge rock after a while. Ashi awaits your excellency in the Black Demon Sect. Chapter 183, Returns to the Hometown. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Shi Mu stopped moving his blade. He then raised his arm, and hung the blade back on his shoulder. A faint curve appeared on the corners of his mouth as he examined the boulder from top to bottom a number of times. The Crowhorn tribe had joined hands with the fierce Snake tribe in order to get rid of their common enemy Shi Mu. Therefore, Shi Mu didn't care if this matter came into the light. In fact, he wanted to see who would be more frightened once this matter was exposed. Shi Mu then tried and found his David's deer outside the camp. He tore off the shattered cloth, and tied up the boulder on its body with it. He then hugged its neck, and caressed it a few times. The David's deer seemed to have understood Shi Mu's unsaid words. It issued a moo sound a few times. It then rubbed its furry head against Shi Mu's body. It looked as if it was reluctant to part with him. Shi Mu had bumped into the David's deer shortly after he had entered the barbarian land. It had accompanied Shi Mu everywhere since then. So, it had developed a little attachment and affection for Shi Mu. But, it wasn't appropriate for Shi Mu to let it accompany him everywhere. After all, this animal was a savage. Shi Mu chose a route after careful observation. It directed him in the opposite direction. He then slapped the David's deer on its buttocks with a huge force. Moo! The David's deer issued a painful screech. Then, it galloped in a certain direction like an arrow. It was so fast that it looked as if it was flying in the air. It arrived close to a short slope in a blink of an eye. Then, it stopped, turned around, and glanced at Shi Mu. Shi Mu looked towards the David's deer, and waved his hand to bid his farewell. The David's deer raised its head, and issued a loud moo sound. After that, it turned around, and disappeared into the night. Then, Shi Mu started to examine the horses of the Crowhorn tribe. He chose one of them, and stuffed the rest of them with a tattered piece clothing that was smeared with his chi. After that, he tied up a boulder on each one of them, and dispersed them in all directions. Shi Mu had wrapped up the matters at the camp very soon. Then, he pulled his bulging bundle of leather up to his back. He strode over, and mounted his chosen barbarian horse. Then, he started follow his map, and advanced in a certain direction. One day later, a man appeared in front of the Crowhorn tribe's campfire's ruins. He was a middle-aged bald man. A long and twisted braid hung on the back of his head. Moreover, a green whip was wrapped around his right arm. His eyes blazed with fury as he stared at the writing on the megalith in front of him. The long whip in his hand started to emit a radiance. Suddenly, his green whip rolled out like a green snake as he flicked his arm. His whip was about to strike the megalith. But then, it rolled backwards at a lightning speed, and got twined around the man's arm once again. The middle-aged man's eyes had resumed their normal state by now. Moreover, a trace of hesitation could be seen flickering in his eyes. He had inspected the entire camp a moment ago. The cavalry soldiers of the Crowhorn tribe had been massacred by someone. Moreover, General Wu Ji's Yen Tian primary stage barbarian warrior had been slaughtered ruthlessly. His corpse was in an extremely terrible shape. But, he judged the means and cultivation arts used to execute this massacre, and realized that it didn't seem to be the same piece of information he had received before. Suddenly, a green light flashed on his chest. Then, green scales started to sprout over his body. His eyes became bloodshot as a spurt of blood gushed into his eyes. He looked at the ground with rapt attention. Then, he continued to move within the camp. The wings of his nose opened and closed at the same time. It seemed as if he was trying to sniff something. Hee, interesting. The furious look on his face had faded away after half an hour. In fact, there was a smile on his face as he muttered something to himself. 1 month later, in a small and remote fishing village in Kaiyuan prefecture of the Dachi kingdom, the sun had appeared on the eastern horizon. A layer of sea smog could be seen extending into the distance. The air was calm, the wind hadn't started to whistle yet. Several small boats could be seen on the sea, they were motionless. They appeared like twinkling stars in the vast sky. They were swaying along with the undulating waves of the sea. The farmland around the village bristled with several old men and women who seemed to be the early risers. They bent as they bustled about in their vegetable fields. The fishing village was dependent upon the sea. The entire land of the village was infertile since the salinity of the land peripheral to the sea was extremely high. Therefore, the fishermen planted only those fruits and vegetables that were suitable for such an infertile land. Most of the villagers were busy with drying fishing nets or fish around their houses. Some of them could be seen quietly sitting at their entrances. They were basking in the sun, and repairing their fishing nets. Lots of children with bare bottoms were bustling around the village. They seemed to be in high spirits, they were laughing, playing, and making noises. They were occupied with various kinds of never-ending games. They were very mischievous. They foraged while chasing behind chickens and ducks. A light brown dog in the village lay prone on the ground in a lazy manner. It was bathing in the first glimmer of dawn. The dog's relaxed pose and wrinkled skin suggested that it was extremely old, so much so that it didn't wish to budge an inch. Suddenly, the old dog's nose picked a smell. It sniffed a few times as if it had found something. It then stretched open its droopy eyelids. After that, it started to bark with teary eyes. It was looking at the entrance of the village. The entire village resounded with its incessant barking. Then, a tall youth appeared at the entrance of the village. He was clad in black clothes. There was a huge bundle of leather on his back. He stood still, and deeply breathed the fishy air of the sea. A hint of excitement glittered in his eyes. It was none other than Shi Mu. He had returned from the barbarian's wasteland. This place was his birthplace, the fishing village from his childhood. Shi Mu had disguised himself as a barbarian man in order to reduce the trouble after he had left the Crowhorn tribe's encampment. After that, he had headed towards the seashore, and had entered the territory that fell under the influence of Priest Yanye. The token that he had received from Priest Yanye had proved to be quite useful to him. He had come across several checkpoint forts that couldn't have been avoided. Moreover, several barbarian cavalry soldiers could be seen patrolling the area. But, everyone allowed him to pass once they saw this token. So, the token had saved him a lot of trouble. Shi Mu had sketched out a plan in advance. He had also planned to forge ahead with his journey during daytime, and had remained in hiding during the nights. He had encountered only a small number of ominous beasts on his way owing to his coordinated efforts. His overall journey had been very smooth. He had reached the edge of the East China Sea half a month later. Then, he had headed towards the village of human race along the seashore. After that, he had entered into the territory of the Dachi kingdom by passing through the Huang kingdom. He had continued to travel throughout day and night across several prefectures and counties. He had finally entered into the territory of Chuan Prefecture in the Dachi kingdom after 2 days. This place was Shi Mu's hometown. He had spent his early childhood in this small fishing village. 5 or 6 years had passed since he had followed after Butler Cheng, and had left this village. After that, he had never gotten the opportunity to go back to his village owing to various reasons. He had finally seized the opportunity with great difficulty this time. So, he felt a bit restless to get back home. After all, he didn't know whether or not he would be able to come back here once he returned to the Black Demon sect in the Yan Kingdom. Shi Mu was lost in such thoughts. Suddenly, the old dog in the village stopped barking. It dashed towards Shi Mu, and sniffed the smell of his body. After that, it started to circle around him happily. Shi Mu couldn't help but smile. He bent down and touched the yellow dog's head. The dog then started to lick his fingers. This old dog belonged to Shi Mu's next-door neighbor Black Yu. Shi Mu had been quite familiar with this dog in those days. This dog had reached the prime of its life when Shi Mu had left the village. Shi Mu patted the old dog's head. He then got up, and walked towards the village with great speed, so much so that it seemed as if he was flying. The old dog followed him for some time while wagging its tail. But then, it started to gasp for breath. It opened its mouth, and extended its tongue out. After that, it ran back to the village's entrance. Shi Mu looked around, and realized that the fishing village hadn't changed even after so many years. The things that he saw around him were exactly the same as he remembered. Several men could be seen in the village. It seemed that it wasn't the appropriate season for them to go out to the sea for fishing. Therefore, most of the men hadn't gone to the sea. Otherwise, they would have already been at the sea by now in usual times. Several villagers were looking at Shi Mu. But, no one dared to go near him owing to his strange appearance. His clothes looked quite expensive. Moreover, there was a huge and valiant-looking black blade hung on his back. "Is this little Mu?" a man sitting by a door said. He was weaving a fishing net. There were ditches all across his face. He was an old man with turbid eyes. "Yes, it's me. Uncle Ju, I've come back to see my mother." A feeling of warmth surged up in Shi Mu's heart. He looked towards the old man and replied with a smile. Shi Mu's mother had faced several hardships in order to survive when he was young. Most of the villagers had held an indifferent attitude towards them back then. This uncle was one of the very few good people who had supported them financially in their difficult times. "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back," the old man seemed to recall something as he muttered to himself. The surrounding men and women revealed various kinds of expressions on their faces as they heard their conversation. They formed several groups of 2 or 3 people, and started to discuss among themselves. "What? He's Shi Mu. He has changed greatly. Look at his appearance, he looks very rich. Hey, look at the blade on his back. It looks so formidable. Did he really become a martial warrior? Did he? What martial arts? Didn't he kill someone in those days, from that Wu family?" "Hush! Speak slowly." Shi Mu was indifferent to the villagers' words. Some of them gazed towards Shi Mu in a strange manner. Shi Mu didn't need to guess the reason behind their gazes. He knew that the Jin and the Wu families would have dispatched people to the fishing village when he had killed their people. Moreover, they would have announced attractive rewards in order to grab Shi Mu. Perhaps, some people amongst these surrounding villagers might have already thought about leaking the information of his return to the village to them. Shi Mu couldn't haggle with these villagers. Moreover, he didn't have to care about the Jin and Wu families owing to his current strength. Shi Mu squatted down in front of Uncle Ju, and had a casual conversation with him for some time. Then, he gave him the cloth in which he had wrapped the gold leaves. He asked him to open it inside his room. After that, he stood up and left. He soon arrived in front of a dilapidated wooden house. This was his and his mother's home. His face revealed a perplexed look as he looked at the house. He noticed some leakages upon the roof. He recovered after a long while. He then gently pushed open the door and walked in. Everything inside the house was same as before. But, everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. The memories of his past began to bubble up in his mind. A smile hung at the corners of his mouth. He quietly stood in the room for some time. He was woken up after an unknown passage of time by the sound of footsteps. They seemed to be getting closer to him. "Mu, you're back," a muffled sound of a man was heard. Then, a 30-year-old man walked inside the house. He was a dark-skinned man. "Yes, I'm back. Long time no see, elder brother Black Yu." Shi Mu turned around, and looked at the man with a smile on his face. The man was dressed up as a fisherman. Black Yu was Shi Mu's neighbor. Everyone used to call him Black Yu as his complexion was very dark. He had grown up together with Shi Mu. In fact, Shi Mu's family was most closely related to Black Yu's family in the entire village. "Mu, a lot of strangers showed up here, once you left the village. Their prime goal was to catch you. They inquired about your whereabouts from door to door. They claimed to be the people of Jin and Wu families of Feng City. They even made a declaration that they would offer a reward of 10,000 silvers in exchange for any information about you. I'm afraid that someone from the village must have already passed the information of your presence in the village by now." Black Yu's eyes brimmed with deep concern as he looked at Shi Mu and said. "Don't worry. I'll be careful, elder brother Black Yu," Shi Mu had a warm feeling inside his heart as he replied. There was still someone in the world who sincerely cared about him. Shi Mu hadn't experienced this kind of a warm feeling since a long time. Chapter 184, An Unexpected Delight. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Black Yu thought that Shi Mu hadn't realized the intensity of the imminent danger. So, he became a little anxious in his heart. He was about to say something. But, he was interrupted by Shi Mu before he could speak. Elder brother Black Yu, how's sister-in-law's health now? Sometimes a fit of an irresistible cough takes over her, and she starts to gasp for breath. But, she seems to be in a good mood today. She has gone to the seashore along with the children to wash shelled shrimps. Black Yu was startled for a moment. He then forced a smile, and spoke while scratching his head. This is for you, elder brother Black Yu. You should take sister-in-law to a good doctor for a proper treatment. Shi Mu pulled out 3 golden leaves from his clothes, and handed them over to him as he spoke. Black Yu gazed at the golden leaves in his hand, they were emitting a golden radiance. He was dumbfounded for a moment. He had never seen such a big amount of money even in his dreams. Mu. Mu. I can't accept this, Black Yu remained motionless. Then, his face turned red, and he stammered in a low voice. Shi Mu smiled and pushed the money into his hand. Black Yu wanted to refuse it. But, he couldn't budge due to an irresistible force. Black Yu declined the golden leaves over and over again. But, he eventually had to receive them. His wife was afflicted with a lung disease. But, they didn't have enough money to go to the big county and visit a good doctor. They had been dragged down by this. But now, he had unexpectedly received such a big gift from Shi Mu, he would remain grateful to him forever. He couldn't bring himself to speak anything for a while. Shi Mu smiled and broke the ice by talking about old things. Black Yu's mood was lifted, and his awkwardness gradually subsided. Soon, an intermittent burst of laughter of the 2 men was heard from time to time, as if they had returned in the old times. After an hour, there was a nameless mound somewhere inside the fishing village. Shi Mu knelt down in front of his mother's grave with deep veneration. He then tossed the bundle of leather to one side of the bushes. Mother, your undutiful son Mu has come to see you. Your dear Mu has officially joined a sect. He has now become a genuine martial warrior. I'm still far from the pledge that I made to you, but you rest assured that I'll definitely succeed. Oh, that's right, your son Mu has taken a fancy to a girl. He fell in love with her at first sight. You once told me that if I ever bump into a girl who would make me fall for her, then I must express my feelings to her immediately. So, Mu has already told his feelings to her. She promised me that I can go to look for her if I step into the Xiantian before turning 30-year-old. Mu would surely bring her here to meet you once he marries her. Shi Mu continued to kneel for an hour or more. He blurted out the things that he had concealed in his heart all these years in front of his mother's grave. He then felt comfortable in his heart. He knocked his head thrice on the ground. He then stood up, and drew his black blade from his back. After that, he started to wield it rapidly. Chi! Chi! A shrill air-piercing sound rang out. The black blade shadows started to whirl around his entire body at the same time. A cold and crude black whirlwind rolled out on the flat surface of the land along with the movements of his feet. Ha! Shi Mu's magic power rushed towards his black blade with full force as he issued a loud shout. Then, a spurt of blazing flames emerged on his blade's surface, they were 1 foot high. The momentum of his blade gradually grew faster. The shadows swirling around him gradually transformed into a fiery dragon, and started to sway around his body in an erratic manner. Then, his blade attained its maximum speed. Shi Mu hacked his blade downwards toward a vacant piece of land with his full strength. Boom! A loud sound was heard. Suddenly, a burst of blazing flames exploded in the place where his blade had just hacked. This explosion blew up the surrounding things in all directions. A big pit was blasted open in the ground at the same time. It was almost 5 feet deep. Shi Mu nodded in satisfaction. Then, his right hand moved, and slipped the black blade back into its scabbard. Shi Mu's stature flashed. Then, he started to bombard his fists in the air. A pair of translucent fists appeared in the air like a crystal jade, as if he was fighting with someone. He continued to shot his fists at various angles without any pause. Shi Mu's mighty force caused a little vibration every time he shot his fists into the air. Ping! Ping! A muffled sound of fists continued to resound for some more time. Shi Mu's stature continued to flash forward and backwards in a brisk manner. He continued to change his direction. His stature flashed from one place to another like a bolt of lightning. The area within the scope of 10 feet was completely shrouded by numerous densely packed shadows of his white fists. Shi Mu finally sprang up from the ground after some time, and pounded his fists towards a nearby tree. It was as thick as a bucket. Boom! A loud rumbling sound rang out. The tree trembled, and collapsed to the ground. Shi Mu stood motionless. His face revealed a hint of recollection. He still remembered the day when he had struck a tree as thick as a bowl with all his strength before leaving the village. But, his punch had only left a 1.5 inch deep fist trace on the tree. A hint of smile bloomed across his face. He turned around and went straight to his mother's grave. He knelt down before her grave once again, and heavily knocked his head thrice on the ground. After that, he got up, picked up the bundle of leather and departed. Shi Mu's heart moved after he had taken a few steps. It seemed as if something had crossed his mind. He turned around, and scud down the mountain in a certain direction. He arrived at the seashore bristling with rocky reefs after a quarter of an hour. He looked for a covered crevice, and hid his leather bundle inside it. He then walked towards the sea. Then, he vanished into the sea. Shi Mu swam deeper towards the seabed like a long fish. A string of air bubbles continued to burst out of his mouth throughout the way. He was born in a fishing village. So, his swimming ability was exceptionally good. Moreover, he had been able to breathe in the water because of the bitter experience that he had gone through in his early years. He had reached into the depths of the sea in no time. The place before his eyes was pitch dark, so much so that he couldn't even see his fingers. Shi Mu stood firm on the seabed. Suddenly, an idea crossed his mind. Then, his eyes turned into a pair of golden pupils, and the seabed became crystal clear before his eyes. He estimated his current position in his mind. After that, he started to advance towards a certain direction. He stopped at the bottom of the water after a short while, and stood on the supple sand in a steady manner. It should be somewhere here. Shi Mu looked around, and soon found the thing that he was looking for, a piece of 70 or 80 feet long reef of stone. It stood upright a dozen or more meters away, and was shrouded by seaweed. Shi Mu's eyes lit up brightly. He then slowly walked over. This reef of stone was the same one that had the big clam suppressed underneath it a few years back. That big clam was now in the possession of Xiangzhu, the saintess of the East China Sea. It could also be considered as a turning point in Shi Mu's life. Suddenly, a golden gleam glittered in his eyes. There was a tiny angle at the bottom of this gigantic reef, which revealed a hint of dark color. That color was different from the dark grey surface of the reef. Shi Mu's heart moved. He pushed the seabed with his feet, and accelerated his speed. He then started to swim, and soon arrived in front of the reef. He squatted down, and carefully observed the reef for a moment. He found that its color was indeed different. It seemed that there was something at the bottom of the reef. He moved 2 steps forward in order to stand up. He then grabbed the prominent and protruded part of the reef with his hands. The real chi within his body surged up violently. After that, he pushed the reef forward with his full strength. Bang! A series of loud rumbling sounds rang out. The current of water at the bottom of sea rushed forth violently. Then, the huge reef crashed down like a huge tree with a loud sound. Shi Mu's vision hovered around. Then, it fell on a black stone. It was as big a watermelon. It was embedded in the bottom of the reef. The surface of the stone was pitch black in color. It seemed quite ordinary at the first glance. But, a flow of black light could be faintly seen on its surface if someone glued his eyes on it for some time. It was apparently a precious treasure. It was far from being ordinary. Shi Mu continued to gaze at the stone for some time. A strange feeling sprouted in his heart. This stone seemed familiar to him, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Suddenly, his right hand flashed and drew his black blade from his back. Then, he moved it closer to the black stone. The texture of both the things was exactly the same. Shi Mu's heart blazed with ecstasy. The material of this stone was the same meteoric iron that had been used to forge his black blade. No wonder this boulder was exceptionally heavy. Shi Mu wielded his right hand with all his strength. 3 or 4 black blade lights fled from his blade, and rushed towards the left and right sides. It left a precise and slanted cut at the place where the black stone and the reef were touching each other. He did so in order to dig out the black meteoric iron from the reef. Whoosh! The black stone got separated, and fell down from the reef with a whooshing sound. Shi Mu then used his black blade to brush the gravels away from the surface of the black stone. An irregular ball-shaped black meteoric iron appeared in front of him. It was as big as a watermelon. Shi Mu turned his hand, and drilled his black blade back into the scabbard like a quick snake. He then bent down, and clasped the meteoric iron with both his hands. His heart fluttered with a fit of excitement. This piece of meteoric iron was a lot heavier than his black blade. His strength had seen an exponential increase. Moreover, his black blade had received some damages during the fight with the three-headed python. So, he would use this stone to rebuild his blade. It could be said that Shi Mu had found an unexpected delight. The water on the shore started to sway up and down after a while. Moreover, a string of air bubbles started to emerge on the surface of the water. Then, the upper body of a man emerged out of the surface of the water with a splash. He proceeded towards the shore with a watermelon-sized black stone in his hand. It was Shi Mu. Shi Mu showed up at Black Yu's house with a huge bundle of leather on his back and a black meteoric iron in his hand half an hour later. He then directly entered into his house. He returned to his broken wooden house after dinner. He then tidied up the old bed. After that, he sat down cross-legged on the bed, and let his tired eyes rest a little. Black Yu delivered a 20-feet-long iron chain early in the next morning. Shi Mu returned to his house and picked up the chain once Black Yu departed. Then, he narrowed his eyes in order to examine it. The iron chain was as thick as an adult human's arm. But, the quality of its material was very ordinary. Shi Mu had requested Black Yu to go to the village, and look for a blacksmith who could make this chain over the night. He then carried the black meteoric iron, and started to tie it up with the chain. The blade took the form of a meteoric hammer after a moment. Shi Mu held the chain with his left hand, and lifted it up conveniently. He finally nodded in satisfaction once he had tested it from all sides. At the noon of the same day, at the entrance of the village, Shi Mu sat inside a horse-drawn black carriage. His gaze slowly swept towards the village that was tranquil as always. He then anxiously looked at the old dog that stood at the entrance of the village. It was looking towards Shi Mu. A trace of perplexed look flickered across Shi Mu's eyes. His eyes finally congealed, and his face revealed a firm and resolute expression after a long while. Go! 2 healthy horses issued a neighing sound, and sped away toward the distance as Shi Mu pulled their reins. After half a month, there was a huge gate at the entrance to Feng City in Quanzhou Prefecture. Pedestrians were constantly passing through this gate like an endless stream. It seemed to be much livelier and prosperous than before. A burst of hurried sounds of horses' hoof was heard from the distance. The sound was coming from a black carriage that was being drawn by horses. The carriage quickly arrived in front of the city gate. A pair of magnificent dark horses were pulling this cart. Both the horses were sweating profusely. They were breathing heavily, as if they had been pulling an exceptionally heavy thing. A grey-robed young man could be seen sitting in the carriage. He had big eyes and bushy eyebrows. His facial features were distinct. It was none other than Shi Mu. He had travelled from the Quanzhou prefecture to this place. A trace of reminiscent look glittered across Shi Mu's face as he looked at the city gate in front of him. He then flicked the reins, and the carriage slowly trod into the gate. It advanced towards the city in a certain direction. Shi Mu had arrived at Feng City in order to see Aunt Zhen and sister Shi Yuhuan. He knew that they had got trapped into a difficult situation because of him. So, Shi Mu was a little concerned about them. The carriage slowly moved along the main street of the Feng City. Shi Mu continued to look around. He couldn't help but let out a sigh deep in his heart. Shi Mu was just an ordinary martial warrior who had barely gained insight into qi sensing when he and Zhongxiu had been forced out of Feng City by the Jin family. The time had gradually passed. The surrounding scenery illustrated that this city hadn't undergone any change. However, Shi Mu had undergone a drastic transformation. He was no longer a young boy who was at the initial phase of the martial arts. Chapter 185, The Golden Dragon Gang. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Shi Mu looked at the passing scenery. The past memories of his life started to flash before his eyes. He started to think about the past events. He seemed absent-minded. Then, he arrived at a familiar place. There was hardly any crowd at the place. He took a few turns, and continued to move forward. He had already crossed the Lu Feng Martial Arts School. Lu Feng Martial Arts School was the place where he had initiated his martial arts practice. Li Qinghai was his teacher back then. Shi Mu pulled the reins of his horses. His horses turned around, and headed towards the Lu Feng Martial Arts School. Shi Mu planned to visit Li Qinghai. Suddenly, he wrinkled his brows. He then turned over and looked behind him. A shadow flashed more than 100 feet away in a small alley. It then quickly vanished. Shi Mu's vision flashed. He didn't know how long he had been spied upon for. The spies were hiding in the surroundings in a careful manner, but they couldn't conceal themselves from Shi Mu's eyes and ears. Shi Mu snorted coldly in his heart. But, he continued to move his vehicle forward with a calm and collected expression on his face. Shi Mu then arrived on a 10 feet wide street. There were old-fashioned buildings on both sides of the street. No one could be seen nearby. This area belonged to the old city. The Black Fox gang used to manage this area back in those days. Shi Mu pulled the reins of the horses, and stopped the carriage. 4 or 5 tall and sturdy people attired in black robes stood side by side not far from Shi Mu's carriage. They held weapons in their hands. And, they had obstructed his way. A golden dragon pattern was embroidered on the sleeves of a few of those people. They all had a malicious and evil look on their faces. Then, 7 or 8 people scuttled out from inside the alleys behind Shi Mu. They were armed with swords, sticks and various kinds of weapons. In addition, some people among the group were holding powerful crossbows, and they were obviously aimed towards Shi Mu. A chill and desolate aura pervaded the air. Your Excellency must be Shi Mu, right? The leader of the group, a scar-faced man, took a step ahead. He then laughed mischievously and asked, "Who are you people? Why are you blocking my way?" Shi Mu didn't reply to his question. Instead, he looked around and asked, "We're the Golden Dragon Gang, and I'm Deputy Chief Mai Zheng. What you did back then is impossible to forget. I never thought that you would dare to return to the Feng City. Well, I admire you for coming back," the scar-faced man said coldly. Shi Mu raised the tip of his brow, but didn't speak. It seemed that the time had finally come. However, this Golden Dragon Gang was unknown to him. He remembered that there was no such gang in Feng City in those days. They must have appeared a few years after he left Feng City. So, Do you people wish to take my head to receive the reward? Shi Mu's vision flashed. He then asked with an expressionless face. The scar-faced man seemed quite strong. He seemed to be a Hotian initial level warrior. Feng City had a lot of gangs back then, but nobody's strength had reached to this level. Moreover, this man was a deputy chief. So, his strength mustn't be weak. The scar-faced man hadn't even opened his mouth to reply when a whiz sound was heard. A long arrow with a wind-piercing sound was launched towards Shi Mu's back. Its speed was quite astonishing. A single-eyed man was crouching on the rear of a wall behind Shi Mu. He held a crossbow in his hand. It was as big as a man. The trace of a proud smile appeared in the eye of the one-eyed man. The scar-faced man became angry. He had received an order that Shi Mu must be brought to the headquarters, and handed over to the head person exactly the way he was, not in the form of a corpse. Suddenly, the scar-faced man exposed an incredible look on his face. He saw that Shi Mu didn't even turn his head. He merely moved his hand, caught the approaching arrow, and pressed it between his two fingers. He then threw it back. Whew! A shrill and sharp sound echoed. The arrow rushed back towards the one-eyed man with thrice the speed with which it had come. The people present at the scene could only see a black line flash before their eyes. The one-eyed man's body flew several feet away, and got knocked against the wall behind him. However, he didn't fall to the ground. Everyone gazed towards him. Then, everyone realized that the arrow had pierced through his heart. His body had been nailed to the wall as a result. He looked extremely scared. He opened his mouth, and issued a few sounds. Then, his body twitched a little, and his pupils became dilated. The people of the Golden Dragon Gang looked extremely surprised. They couldn't help but drew a step backwards. The weapons in their hands started to shiver. They looked towards Shi Mu with astonishment. Only their leader, the scar-faced man, still remained tranquil. But, a trace of fear could be seen in his eyes. He evaluated the situation, and concluded that it was impossible for him to capture Shi Mu. I'm not very patient. So, quickly tell me why you've stopped me. Shi Mu said coldly. We had received a letter at our headquarters. It carried the news that you've entered the city. The helper from the gang had come over to pass the message, that there's a powerful man who wants to see you. He commanded me to take you to him. The scar-faced man swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and said carefully. Shi Mu raised the tip of his brow as he heard this. Then, a thought crossed his mind. All right. I'll go with you. He hesitated for a while, and replied. The scar-faced man and the people around him were startled as they heard this. It seemed as if they couldn't believe their ears. Don't act so clumsily, Shi Mu urged in an impatient manner. The scar-faced man quivered and responded. He nodded, and started to walk ahead in order to lead the way. The other people put away their raised weapons, and followed closely behind the scar-faced man. The people on the streets saw a strange scene. The deputy chief of the Golden Dragon Gang, a member of an underworld gang, was running amok in the city along with a group of people. But, everyone had an uncomfortable expression on their faces. A youth with an unfamiliar face was following in a carriage behind these men. But, this man's expressions were calm. The group arrived in front of the door of a manor in a remote area of the city half an hour later. The carpet area of the manor seemed quite big through the door. It seemed to consist of 7 or 8 acres of land. The building inside it looked extremely clean and tall. 2 gatekeepers from the Golden Dragon Gang stood on the entrance in black robes. A variety of sounds of various activities and people talking could be heard from inside the manor. Then, a few tall and strong-looking people came out to welcome them. Deputy Chief Mai, is this the man Master told us about? A man with a muscular body and a dark face shot a quick glance at Shi Mu and asked. The scar-faced man looked towards Shi Mu and nodded. The muscular man didn't notice the uncomfortable expression on the scar-faced man's face. He took a few steps forward, and sized Shi Mu up. Boy, you're smart, the muscular man laughed nastily, and spoke. He had spoken in a general tone. Shi Mu had jumped down the carriage by this time. He had an expressionless face. He didn't pay attention to the muscular man, and started to walk towards the manor. He was carrying a watermelon-sized black stone tied up in chains in his left hand. The muscular man's complexion changed, his face turned red in anger. He wasn't an ordinary low-ranked person of the Golden Dragon Gang. He had never been ignored in this manner, that too in front of so many people. "Boy, stop! I want to talk to you," the muscular man shouted in anger. He then raised his palm like a palm leaf in order to grab Shi Mu's shoulder. "Wan Qing, stop!" The scar-faced man was shocked. He then shouted out loud. But, it was too late. The fuzzy shadow of a hand flashed, and patted on the shoulder of the muscular man. Click, a bone-breaking sound was heard. The muscular man's body went out flying like a scarecrow. His shoulder and collarbone had been broken. And, they had caved in as a result. Blood started to gush out of his mouth as he rolled on the ground. It couldn't be determined if he was alive or dead. The surrounding people turned pale with fright. Shi Mu didn't pay attention to anyone. He didn't stop walking either. He then entered through the gate of the manor. "Lead the way." The scar-faced man stared blankly as he heard this. He then nodded. A few members of the gang shot a meaningful glance towards him. He then ran in front of Shi Mu, and started to walk while leading his way. The other men looked at each other in dismay as they saw this. But, they forced themselves to follow behind Shi Mu, and entered the manor. A large number of people stood in a large courtyard in the depth of the manor. There was a 50-year-old man attired in black clothes. His stature wasn't too high, but there was an extremely strong aura around his body. Everyone seemed to be feeling low in front of this man. This man was a consummate-level Houtian master. A middle-aged man with a white face stood behind the old man. He too was attired in a black robe. This man was emitting an aura of a late-stage Houtian warrior. One of these two men was the lord of Wu family of Feng City, the other one was his younger brother Wu Feng. The other men in the courtyard included a few followers of the Wu family. The rest of the men attired in black robes were the men of the Golden Dragon Gang. The head of this group was a tall and gigantic man. His eyes were like copper bells, and his facial features were malicious. His cultivation was quite extraordinary. He had reached the middle stage of the Houtian realm. "This is Wu family. I thought that the Jin family would find me first." Shi Mu stood in the crossing of the courtyard. He swept his gaze towards the men. He then yawned as if the other person was saying something uninteresting. Shi Mu, you killed 3 members of the Wu family including Wu Tong and my son Wu Hua. You deserve to die 10,000 deaths for the crime you committed. Today, I'm calling for your blood." A deep-rooted hate emitted from the eyes of the white-faced man Wu Feng. He then waved his hand and said. A few followers of the Wu family stopped at the exit door of the courtyard. The disciples of the Golden Dragon Gang slowly came towards Shi Mu. "The men of your Wu family wanted to kill me back then, I was just protecting myself," Shi Mu replied. An ominous glint flashed in Wu Feng's eyes. He moved his hand, and a handle of a sword glittering like frost and snow appeared in his hand. The weapon seemed prepared. Shi Mu's enemies looked at each other in a furious manner. Wu Feng was thinking to dismember Shi Mu's body into 10,000 pieces. Suddenly, a hand gripped Wu Feng's shoulder. It was the lord of the Wu family Wu Liang. He then pulled Wu Feng back. "Wait a minute," Wu Liang said heavily. Wu Feng genuinely believed in Wu Liang. So, he stopped obediently, even though he seemed unwilling. "It's hard to imagine that your strength has forged ahead in this manner only in a few years. It has already advanced to the advanced stage of the Houtian realm." Wu Liang looked at Shi Mu and spoke. "What?" Wu Feng and everyone from the Golden Dragon Gang were surprised as they heard this. Shi Mu sneered, but didn't speak. He hadn't concealed his aura. So, Wu Liang, a Hotian warrior of consummate stage, was naturally capable of perceiving his present cultivation. Wu Liang's body gradually started to emit a strong aura. His clothes started to prop up as he walked towards Shi Mu. He left deep footprints on the ground in his wake. The death anniversary of Wu Tong and Wu Hua will arrive after 3 months. I would have sent men to slaughter the entire fisherman village of yours, if you hadn't shown your face today. It would have been a sacrifice to Wu Tong and little Hua's souls in heaven. I didn't think that you had the courage to come back. Well, this has simplified the matter, Wu Liang said. Shi Mu's complexion sank as he heard this. Several cold ons flashed in the depth of his pupils. His real qi also started to revolve within his body. Chapter 186, Bloody Slaughter. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Suddenly, a white light flashed before Shi Mu's eyes. Then, 10 or more shining blade lights came rushing towards him in a crisscross pattern. Wu Liang's figure rapidly arrived near him like a powerful old horse. He wielded a shiny blade in his hand. The blade hadn't yet arrived, but its violent force was already pressing. It was ready to attack. Shi Mu sneered. He then shook the meteoric hammer in his left hand. Several black kung fu balls were issued out of it in a circular manner like vicious dragons. It then collided against Wu Liang's blade light like a forceful gale. Bang! A loud metal clanging sound echoed. The blade shadows dissipated. Then, the sword in Wu Liang's hand shook to fragments. An earth-shattering force was transmitted out from half of the blade. It then pierced into Wu Liang's body. A mouthful of blood puffed out of Wu Liang's mouth. The blade that he was holding in his right hand broke down in a flash. Then, his body went out flying with great speed, and fell heavily on the ground. A mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth once again as his complexion turned pale like a golden paper. The complexion of everyone present at the scene changed. Wu Liang, the Hotian consummate level warrior, had been beckoned by Shi Mu and defeated on the spot. Wu Feng had rushed from the other side to converge an attack along with Wu Liang against Shi Mu. However, he didn't rush further, and stayed foolishly in his place. Shi Mu hit his foot on the ground. His figure revolved and went flying towards Wu Feng. He arrived in front of him in a flash. He then opened up the fingers of one of his hands, and grabbed Wu Feng's face. His fingers aroused a strong wind as if 5 steel awls had been shot out. It then pierced Wu Feng's face in a painful manner. Wu Feng was shocked. However, he wasn't weak. He moved his body backwards, and shook the blade in his hand. The soft blade became straight, and went chopping towards Shi Mu's palm. Shi Mu sneered in his heart. Then, fine black scales appeared on his palm. After that, he caught the blade from its edge. Wu Feng felt as if he was trying to chop a huge rock with his blade. Then, Wu Feng got stuck, and was left unable to move a single jot. Shi Mu sneered, and pulled his palm back. Wu Feng's hand shook as Shi Mu pulled the soft blade away from his hand. Shi Mu then wielded it. Then, the hilt of the soft blade knocked against Wu Feng's chest. A ka sound echoed in Wu Feng's chest as an unknown number of bones broke down in his body. A mouthful of blood gushed out of his mouth as he went flying upside down several feet away. Then, he heavily fell on the ground. It seemed as if he was about to die. Shi Mu's attacks against Wu Liang and Wu Feng had taken place within a few breaths' time. Both the big masters of the Wu family had been severely injured. They seemed as fragile as eggs. The courtyard became quiet for a while, not even a single person said anything. There was a pin-drop silence. The face of the tall and sturdy man, the head of the Golden Dragon gang, turned ashen grey. He then opened his mouth as he wanted to say something. But, he didn't know what to say. Shi Mu waved his hand, and threw away the soft blade. His fist had been covered with black scales a moment ago. But, it restored in its original state in a flash, and changed into a slender white palm. Shi Mu looked up in the sky, and let out a sigh. It seemed that Wu family's many years of resentment had finally been dealt with. In fact, he had intended to convince the Wu family to let out the feelings of revenge from their minds. But, Wu Liang's words had made him extremely angry. After that, he had been set into movement with the intention of murdering Wu Liang. The necklace in Shi Mu's neck had got polluted with Wu Feng's blood. Surprisingly, the blood had been absorbed by the necklace. Then, a little red light shone on the surface of the necklace. Bang! A brutal and frenzied aura transmitted out of the necklace, and invaded into Shi Mu's mind. It then penetrated through his mind like lightning. Shi Mu's body shook. Then, a scene appeared in his mind. He saw that the earth had been stained red with blood. He could see multiple layers of dead bodies and countless skeletal remains. There was also a mountain of corpses beside the blood sea. A long whistle of a gigantic grey ape rose in the sky. It was beating its chest with its arms, and letting out loud roars into the sky. Ah! Suddenly, a red blood light appeared in Shi Mu's eyes. Moreover, his body was emitting a frightful and menacing qi. This qi reached to a substantive amount. It then took the shape of a blood-red fog, and wrapped itself around Shi Mu's body. Shi Mu seemed like a bloodthirsty demon at the moment. A frantic and vicious qi field shrouded the entire manor. The bodies of all the men inside the manor started to shiver. Then, someone shouted out, and the men scattered like birds and beasts towards distant places in order to escape from there. Shi Mu issued a low roar. A bloodthirsty urge appeared in his heart. But, he was forced to stop by his remaining intellect. Suddenly, a strange and demonic red light shone on the necklace. It seemed as if blood was flowing on the surface of the necklace. An angry roar could be heard coming out of it. Then, a powerful and evil aura pervaded into Shi Mu's mind like lightning. It smashed his remaining intellect in a flash. Shi Mu slowly raised his head. His eyes had already changed into blood-red color. He had a murderous aura across his face, his facial features were also distorted. He roared as his figure became as strong as wind. He then rushed to the courtyard towards the people fleeing in panic. He waved the meteoric hammer in his left hand. He then rushed into the crowd with his bare fangs and brandishing claws like a black dragon. Bang! 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 Several men were swept by the black dragon, their bodies exploded and split open. They all died on the spot. They didn't even get the time to scream or shout. Blood sprinkled down on Shi Mu's body like raindrops. His face exposed a look of satisfaction. He breathed deeply, and a terrible smile appeared on his face. He looked at the other people in the courtyard with his blood-red eyes, and laughed in a nasty manner. He then quickly rushed past them. Who? Who? He shot out the meteoric hammer in his hand in all directions. Then, black after-images were issued out of it with a boo-hoo sound. Everything within the range of the black after-images was split open, whether it was a man, a tree, a rock, or a house. No one and nothing could escape. The people in the courtyard started to issue wails of despair. Some men even knelt and begged for mercy, but nothing proved to be useful. Shi Mu had transformed into a bloodthirsty murderer. So, he was incapable of showing any mercy. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The leader of the Golden Dragon Gang was swept away by a shadow, his head was split open. The red and white-colored insides of his brain were spread on the ground. Another man of the Wu family was chopped down horizontally by the black blade in Shi Mu's right hand, his internal organs flowed out on the ground. Wu Liang's right arm had been broken. He never feared death. But now, his body was shivering. He crawled up while resisting the pain. However, he didn't go towards dying Wu Feng. Instead, he fled towards the depth of the manor. He had only taken a couple of steps when a humming sound was heard. Then, a black ball came out whistling from behind, and hit his body. Bang! A loud sound echoed. A huge force hit Wu Liang's body, and split it up into pieces. Then, blood started to spurt out of the pieces of his body. The meteoric hammer flew upside down as Shi Mu shook the iron chains. He looked at Wu Liang's crushed body, and his eyes brimmed with a blooded light. He then turned around, and pounced towards the other men. Blood was splashed, destroyed limbs and broken arms flew out randomly, the rumbling sounds of buildings collapsing were heard from inside the manor from time to time. The previously grand courtyard had nearly been leveled to the ground within less than a quarter of an hour. More than 100 crushed corpses lay on the ground. There was blood everywhere. The ground had almost been dyed red, and a pungent smell of blood was arising from every direction. Shi Mu stood in the center of the hill of corpses and sea of blood. He then closed his eyes, and regained his senses. Now, he was no longer a malevolent murderer. His face was full of sweat and blood. His was panting heavily. He was still carrying the meteoric hammer in his left hand. It was covered in blood and flesh. Moreover, blood was dripping from the black blade in his right hand. Shi Mu took rest for a while. He then slowly opened his eyes still had traces of red. But, he had regained his consciousness, he looked extremely tired. Shi Mu looked at the necklace that was pressed against his chest. Suddenly, he pulled it and threw it away into the distance. The necklace fell on the ground and rolled for a while. Shi Mu looked at the necklace with a little fear. This thing had turned out to be extremely demonic, it was even capable of controlling his mind. He would never dare to wear this thing around his neck again. Shi Mu thought for a moment. He then went over, and picked up the necklace. He wrapped it up in a torn piece of cloth, and put it into his chest pocket. He looked around and saw the dead bodies lying around, his complexion became pale. Shi Mu had slaughtered many people in his life. But, this kind of a bloodbath had never taken place before. The presence of bloody qi in the air was exceptionally pungent. It was irritating to his nose. In fact, Shi Mu had a greasy feeling as he inhaled it. Shi Mu felt a little nausea as a result. So, he turned around and walked outside the manor. He had only taken a few steps when he wrinkled his brows. A person's grey shadow jumped from the roof of the manor, and rushed towards Shi Mu from a distant place. It came close to him within a few breaths' time. It was a teenager with a sword on his back. His complexion changed as he looked at the condition of the manor. He then held the hilt of the sword, and looked towards Shi Mu. Feng Li. Shi Mu was flabbergasted. The grey-robed youngster was none other than Feng Li. Feng Li was startled. He then realized that the man standing in front of him with a blood-soaked body was Shi Mu. Brother Shi Mu. Feng Li withdrew his hand from the hilt of his sword and exclaimed. Brother Feng, long time no see. Shi Mu nodded towards Feng Li. Long time no see. Who would have thought that we'd meet here? Brother Shi, did you do this to this place? Feng Li looked around and asked. Shi Mu hesitated. Then, he nodded in response. Brother Shi has great skills. It seems that your strength has advanced a lot. Feng Li didn't seem to care about the slaughter Shi Mu had carried out. Instead, colors of excitement flashed across his eyes. Shi Mu was flabbergasted. Feng Li's tone seemed to be a little different than before. Oh! By the way, why are you here? Suddenly, a thought flashed in Shi Mu's mind. He then turned around and asked. Today is my mother's death anniversary. I've come here to offer sacrifices to her. I've come to Feng City to take care of one more thing, Feng Li replied. He then came near a body of a big man. This man was the tall and sturdy leader of the Golden Dragon Gang. His dead body seemed more intact than the other bodies in the surrounding area. However, there was a big hole in its chest. Feng Li then pulled out his long sword. A sword light flashed, and fell on the tall man's head. Feng Li severed the head from its body, and wrapped it up in a cloth. Brother Feng, was this man your enemy? Shi Mu was flabbergasted. He then asked. Feng Li remained silent for a moment. He then sighed and replied, the Black Fox gang had been wiped out by the Golden Dragon gang back in those days. Gao Yuan was also killed by this man. I had come back to revenge the death of brother Gao Yuan and the other brothers of the Black Fox gang. I was waiting for the right opportunity to sweep away the Golden Dragon gang. Unfortunately, the enemy was alert. This man was hiding behind Wu family this entire time. So, I didn't find any opportunity. Brother Shi has unknowingly helped me in settling this matter. Feng Li cupped his hands towards Shi Mu in greeting. Brother Feng, there's no need to be so courteous, Shi Mu replied. Chapter 187, Meeting and Leaving. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. It seems from Brother Shi's expressions that the curse has been lifted from his body, right? Suddenly, a thought crossed Feng Li's mind. He then sized Shi Mu up, and said, Yes. I've removed the totem curse, just the way you told me. Many thanks to Brother Feng for helping me, Shi Mu nodded and replied. Traces of surprise flashed across Feng Li's eyes. Then, he said in a humble manner. Oh, by the way. Shi Mu felt emotionally moved. He then took out a small thing wrapped in a piece of cloth from his bosom. This necklace belongs to Brother Feng. Now, the human and barbarian races have formed an alliance. So, I've no reason to keep this thing with me. I was planning to go to the Black Turtle sect to find you. But, I found you here. So, I'm giving this back to you now, he said. He then handed over the piece of cloth to Feng Li without opening it. So, tell me, did the human and barbarian races really sign the ceasefire agreement? So, the rumor is indeed true, Feng Li mumbled to himself in a low voice. He then reached out, and accepted the piece of cloth from Shi Mu. Shi Mu saw that Feng Li's expression had become a little sad. He sighed in his heart, he didn't know what to say. Feng Li's face looked blank. He opened up the piece of cloth, took out the necklace and wore it around his neck. Then, he turned around in an absent-minded manner, and started to walk towards a distant place. Brother Feng, are you going back to the Black Turtle sect? Shi Mu asked after a little hesitation. I'll not go back. Feng Li stopped walking. He then said in a dull voice without turning around. Shi Mu had heard Feng Li's words despite his dull voice. His voice contained a deep disappointment towards the union of the human race. I joined the Black Turtle sect to take revenge from the barbarian race. The barbarian race is brutal and cruel. Brother Shi, you must have seen with your own eyes how they treat the human race at the frontier. I'd never thought even in my dreams that the Union would reconcile with the barbarian race. Feng Li's voice shivered as he said with clenched fists. The situation had become quite threatening as the sea race was ready to fight with the human race in the East China Sea. The humans were surrounded by enemies from both the sides. We the Seven Sects and the Dachi Kingdom couldn't withstand them. People would have been in a terrible situation when the time came. So, the Union had no other choice, Shi Mu said in a heavy tone. I hate the barbarian race, no matter what. We can't live under the same sky. Now, I can't stay with the Black Turtle sect as the Union has reconciled with the barbarian race, Feng Li said with a bitter smile. He then turned his head. Brother Feng, what are you planning to do? Shi Mu asked. Planning? I'll go to the central continent. Feng Li looked up, his face revealed a fierce expression. Central continent? Shi Mu was astonished. He had heard about this place before. The area of the Dachi Kingdom, Yan Nation and Huang Nation was expansive. And, the western side of these kingdoms didn't share border with the barbarian wasteland. But, these areas were only a part of the eastern portion of the Dongzhou continent. The area of the Dongzhou continent was thousands times wider than the area of the eastern peninsula. This place was said to be the holy land of practicing arts. This place was also the origin of the human race. In fact, that area was 10 times more flourishing and lively than the peninsula of the Seven Sects Alliance. In fact, Shi Mu had once heard that the Black Demon sect was also a mere sub-branch of the Heavenly Demon sect of the Central Continent. The Central Continent is extremely lively and flourishing. But, I've heard that we would have to pass through severe natural barriers and incomparable danger if we were to go there from here. There isn't any certainty of the success for even a Xian Tian warrior, Shi Mu said. Thank you for your concern, brother Shi. But, I've some plans. How would I take revenge in the future if I wouldn't even be able to overcome the difficulties in this path? Feng Li replied in a firm tone. Brother Feng, I see that you loathe the barbarian race. When I went to the barbarian wasteland, I found that majority of the barbarian people are peaceful. They hate wars, and long for peace. The war will only bring endless slaughtering. Shi Mu looked towards Feng Li and said slowly. Hehe, it seems that you're speaking in favor of the barbarian race. I've experienced more life than you, brother Shi. You don't need to persuade me, Feng Li said in an unconcerned manner. By the way, what's the history of your necklace? The high priest of the barbarian race Bai Lig seemed to be very concerned about this thing. Shi Mu didn't give any further advice as he heard Feng Li's words. He then recalled something and asked. Bai Lig. Feng Li raised his eyebrows. He clenched his teeth as spoke this name. Shi Mu gazed at Feng Li. He then immediately withdrew his gaze. It seemed that Feng Li had some link with the high priest. His true origins were truly unusual and unpredictable. Feng Li took a deep breath and spat out. He then slowly turned around, the expressions on his face had already become tranquil. He looked numb as if he was in deep thought. He said, I didn't know that brother Shi had met the high priest of the barbarian race. It seems that your trip to the barbarian wasteland was quite an experience. It's nothing like that. I met the troop sent by the Union to hold peace talks with the barbarian race by coincidence, as we were going towards the same place. So, we went together to the Holy Snow Palace of the barbarians. Shi Mu told Feng Li about the peace talks and his journey. But, he didn't say anything about his experience in the portal of the brave warriors. However, he told him about the lucky victory of the peaceful barbarians. Feng Li remained silent for a while. He then laughed in a mischievous manner. I've already explained everything to you regarding this necklace. Everything I said was absolutely true. But, some things are secrets, and it'll be inconvenient to disclose them for now. Please, forgive me for this. Feng Li cupped his hands in salutation towards Shi Mu. His face seemed blank. If that's the case, then I wouldn't ask much. But, this necklace has an exceptionally ruthless aura around it. You should be careful by all means after you wear it on your body, Shi Mu smiled and said. Feng Li's eyes flashed. He then cupped his hands in greeting towards Shi Mu once again. After that, he turned around, and walked over to a distant place with a very fast speed. His silhouette started to recede, and gradually turned into a black dot. Shi Mu sighed as he looked at Feng Li's departing figure. He then turned around, and took a glance at the ruins of the manor. He hesitated for a while, and then went inside the manor. He appeared from inside the manor after a while. He then turned around, and jumped into his carriage. A few strange colors flashed in his eyes as he looked towards the building not far away from him. Move! He pulled the reins, and his carriage started to advance forward. The sound of the wheels echoed as the carriage traveled towards a distant place. Then, two figures of slightly built men appeared behind that building. These two people were 17 or 18 years old. They neither seemed to be from the Golden Dragon Gang nor from the Wu family. It seemed that they were spies of some other powerful family. Their complexions were deathly pale, and their bodies were shivering in a continuous manner. There were traces of frightening colors across their faces. One of them looked at the manor with fear as his nose smelt reeking blood. He felt a little nauseated, and vomited on the spot. His companion was greatly shocked. He quickly held the other man. He then ran quickly towards the other side. After half an hour, in the Lu Feng martial arts school, Shi Mu was walking with Li Qinghai while dressed in an embroidered robe. Shi Mu had already found a guest house in the city. He had washed away the smell of reeking blood from his body, and had changed his clothes into new ones. Shi Mu was looking extremely refreshed while dressed in traditional warrior garments with wide shoulders, rich body, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. There was a handsome and bright aura on his resolute and lively face. Li Qinghai hadn't changed too much in the last few years. He had merely caught a smear of hoarfrost on his temple. There was a strange redness across his face, and he looked quite emotional. He looked towards Shi Mu with deep and grateful eyes. Master Li, you don't need refuse them. These are just a few basic strengthening pills, that's all. Your disciple can't repay you the favor of teaching me back in those days. Shi Mu cupped his hands in greeting towards Li Qinghai and said. These Guyuan pills are probably nothing to you, but they hold a great significance to me. I can make a progress with my cultivation for many years by relying on these pills you've given me, Li Qinghai replied with a little excitement. Shi Mu gave a faint smile. Then, both the men chatted for a while. After that, Shi Mu turned over, climbed on his carriage and bid goodbye to Li Qinghai. He then left from the Lu Feng martial arts school. A long time has passed. They must have received accurate information by now. Shi Mu exposed a smile on his face as he muttered to himself. He shook the reins at the same time, and the carriage sped towards another direction. Inside a hall in the residence of the Jin family. All the masters and members of the Jin family were assembled in the hall. The masters of the Jin family stood on a side, they looked nervous. An old man wearing a magnificent golden robe sat on the main seat. He was a hale and hearty old man with white eyebrows. This old man was the head of the Jin family. His cultivation had reached the consummate level of the Houtian realm. He was the elder of the Jin family. He didn't look old and clumsy even though he was 90 years old. The old elder of the Jin family wrinkled his white eyebrows, his face revealed colors of anxiety. Suddenly, he stood up, and started to pace back and forth in the hall with a restless and insomniac look on his face. An extremely thin and short man stood in the center of the hall. It seemed that he had just reported something to the old elder. Are you sure that man was Shi Mu? The elder stopped pacing, turned his head and looked towards the youth in golden clothes. He then asked in a deep voice. Yes, yes. I'm telling you, elder, this is absolutely true. His appearance has changed a little, but he was undoubtedly Shi Mu, the thin youth said hastily. His face was pale. A lingering fear flashed through his eyes as he said Shi Mu. All the people present in the hall started to discuss among themselves in low voices as they heard these words. Where is this man now? The elder asked. He went in the direction of the Lu Feng martial arts school after he left from the Golden Dragon Gang's manor, the thin youth replied. The elder raised the tip of his brow. His face exposed a puzzled expression. Shi Mu had practiced martial arts under Li Qinghai in the Lu Feng martial arts school when he had come to the Feng city earlier. The master of the Jin family stepped forward and explained. Assign a man to keep an eye on Shi Mu's movements. If you find any sign that he's coming towards the Jin family, then notify me immediately. The elder hesitated for a while. He then commanded. Father, don't worry. I've already sent men to the Lu Feng martial arts school. We've received a message from a messenger pigeon that everyone is safe, the master of the Jin family replied. The elder nodded as he heard this. Father, this child used to be daring in those days. He had even killed our fifth brother and Jin Tian. Now, he has dared to come back. We'll now lay an inescapable trap, and capture him. Then, we'll kill the enemy to revenge our fifth brother. A valiant-looking and shady-faced middle-aged man stood up and said loudly. This man was the 9th master in terms of seniority of the Jin family's generation. He was the closest relative of the 5th master of the Jin family. Moreover, he had been the most enthusiastic person to track down Shi Mu's whereabouts in these past years. Old 9th, father is here. You don't need to babble nonsense right now, the face of the master of the Jin family became cold as he said in a stern voice. The middle-aged man's complexion sank. He didn't dare to talk back. But, he still had an unconvinced expression on his face. Chapter 188, Establishing Prestige. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. Didn't you just hear? Shi Mu single-handedly slaughtered more than 100 gang members of the Golden Dragon Gang, along with Wu Liang and Wu Feng. His strength has increased a lot. So, we can't strive against his qi, and become his enemies once again. The eldest master of the Jin family looked at the elder and spoke in a heavy tone. The valiant middle-aged man didn't say anything. His complexion looked undetermined. The rest of the members of the Jin family had anxious and frightened expressions on their faces. The old elder started to pace back and forth. He then walked over, and sat down on his seat. Eldest master, what do you think? How should we handle this matter? The elder pondered for a while and asked. Father, this Shi Mu is also the nominal son of our seventh sister. We the Jin family had offered rewards to capture him back in those days, because of the fifth brother and Jin Tian. But, he hasn't been harmed. So, I think that we should probably make settlement with this Shi Mu. Master of Jin family turned his face towards the elder and replied. Eldest master, what do you mean by this? Don't tell me that the death of the fifth master and Jin Tian will go in vain, the valiant middle-aged man bellowed in rage and said. Ninth master, that matter had originated because of Jin Tian's mistake. Then, the fifth brother lost his mind, and rushed ahead in hatred. This led him to his death. Now, in the present circumstances, do you think that we should be in conflict with Shi Mu for the two people who have already passed away? The master of the Jin family replied in a tranquil tone without turning his head. Ninth master, eldest master is right. We don't know how this Shi Mu cultivated his body, and became so powerful. Otherwise, he was no match for Wu Liang of the Wu family. Shi Mu's strength is at least at the Houtian consummate level, another courteous middle-aged man added. Humph! That Shi Mu is too young. I can't believe that he has so much strength, and that he killed Wu Feng and Wu Liang. He certainly must have used some trick. We only need to use all of our tubes of flaming wind, and lay out the flaming mines widely. We won't let Shi Mu get away if he dares to step in our house. The valiant middle-aged man gnawed his teeth and said. Ninth master, don't talk rubbish. The tubes of flaming wind are precious. We the Jin family have spent time of 100 years to obtain these 30 or so tubes. How can we use all of them at once? The master of the Jin family replied in an angry manner. The valiant middle-aged man still wanted to say something. But, the old elder interrupted him and said, Ninth master, I know that you had good relations with the fifth master. But, this matter is of great concern. Just let the eldest master handle it properly. You don't need to interfere. The valiant middle-aged man seemed unwilling. However, he didn't dare to say anything else. He then sat down silently. Eldest master, please continue to speak. How should we react if that Shi Mu comes to our house? The old elder turned his vision towards the eldest master of the Jin family and asked. Father, I think that we should first end the house arrest of the seventh sister since she's personally related to Shi Mu. After all, seventh sister is a member of the Jin family. Don't worry, we can handle this together, the master of the Jin family said. Suddenly, a sound of hurried footsteps was heard from outside. I've come to report to the elder. There's a man outside, who calls himself Shi Mu. He has come to pay a visit. An old-looking housekeeper came in staggering. He then said with a deathly white complexion. What? Suddenly, the elder stood up. The other members of Jin family were also surprised. Eldest master, didn't you say that some followers of the Jin family were watching over this man? Then, why didn't we find out about this? The old elder looked towards the master of the Jin family, and said in an angry tone. The complexion of the master of the Jin family became pale. He became speechless, he couldn't understand how this had happened. Then, the sound of hurried footsteps was heard once again. "I've come to report to the old elder." The followers of the Jin family were found on the Vermilion Bird Street near the Lu Feng Martial Arts School. They all are unconsciousness, and their condition isn't good. "But, there's no danger of death," a short middle-aged man came running inside and reported. The old elder took a deep breath. He could barely take hold of the fear in his heart. "Jinfu, invite that Shi Mu into the reception hall." "I'll be there," the elder finally showed the manners of the head of the family, and commanded in a calm voice. Jinfu replied in agreement. He was about to turn around and go out when a clear and sonorous voice was heard from outside. "No need. It's good to meet here, since all of you are already present here. There's no need to go into the reception hall." The men of Jin family saw a man's figure in front of them. A silhouette of a youth in an embroidered gown appeared in the doorway of the hall. It was none other than Shi Mu. Everyone present in the hall quickly shifted their gazes towards him. They all had expressions of anger and despise in their eyes. Shi Mu had no weapon on his body. He had left the meteoric hammer and the black blade outside in the carriage. Everyone in the hall was about to attack him. They all stood up, and pulled out all the weapons from their bodies. The atmosphere in the hall became exceptionally tensed. "Everyone, stop!" The elder's pupils shrank as he looked towards Shi Mu. He then shouted out loud. Everyone was startled at first. Then, a strange smile appeared on everyone's faces as they saw Shi Mu's empty hands hanging by his sides. They didn't know why, but a chill had been sent out in their hearts. In fact, they were clueless as to why they had pulled out their weapons. They put the weapons back into their sheaths. They then looked Shi Mu in the eye. But, their eyes were still filled with colors of vigilance. "Your Excellency is Shi Mu," the old elder looked at Shi Mu and said. "Yes, it's me. Your Majesty must be the elder." Shi Mu took a step, and entered the hall. He then laughed in a grim manner and replied. The old elder looked at Shi Mu and approached him. The outer corners of his eyes were flickering, and his entire body had got covered in dense real qi. Shi Mu's cultivation was only at the late stage of the Hotian realm. But, there was a kind of a huge and oppressive feeling about him, the kind that couldn't be described in words. In fact, it seemed that everyone was facing a gigantic creature, not a warrior of martial arts. It made them tremble with fear. The old elder induction wasn't inferior either. But, Shi Mu had absorbed the beast soul of the three-headed ominous python. So, there was an aura of a vicious beast around his body owing to his totem practice. It made all the men shiver. "Hee, so you're Shi Mu. I'm the eldest master of the Jin family. You're the foster son of our seventh sister. So, you're also a member of our Jin family. Come. Let me introduce you to some of the elders of our family." The master of the Jin family welcomed Shi Mu with a huge smile across his face. "Elders," Shi Mu looked at everyone present in the hall with disdain. "I only know Aunt Zhen among the elders of the Jin family. I heard that you took out your anger on her, and imprisoned her because I killed Jin Tian and the fifth master Jin back then. Is this true?" Shi Mu's complexion turned cold. He looked towards the old elder, and asked in a blunt manner. The old elder felt angry in his heart. His complexion turned as black as the base of a burnt pan. Shi Mu aggressively began to walk into the hall. The elder was also a well-known figure in the Feng city. He had been known as an honorable man for decades. But, he had never been mocked by a younger man in this way. He let out a gentle breath. It seemed as if he was about to say something. Suddenly, a black sword shadow appeared from a side. It came quietly towards Shi Mu's back. It was the ninth master of the Jin family. He stood behind Shi Mu. So, he had rushed down to kill Shi Mu as he saw him talking to the old elder. The ninth master of the Jin family was a middle-staged Hotian warrior. His sword shadow skills were quite powerful. He had a good reputation in the Feng city. His surprise attack was quite fierce and steady. It was improbable for a late-stage Hotian warrior to escape from such an attack from such a close range. Moreover, the black sword in his hand was emitting a faint black light. It had been smeared with a deadly poison, the blood seal throat. Shi Mu would collapse on the ground and never get up if it pierced into his skin. A bright light flashed in the elder's eyes. His heart instantly moved. Suddenly, he shouted loudly. Then, a cold light flashed in his hand and a sword as thin as a willow leaf and a hilt as wide as a finger went out. A sword light flashed, and 10 slender and cold lights were shot out. They went stabbing towards Shi Mu while issuing an ear-piercing sword wind sound. The sword light shrouded Shi Mu from all the directions. There wasn't any way for him to retreat. The sword light of the 9th master of the Jin family was only 3 inches away from his back at the moment. A smiling expression flashed through the elder's eyes. It seemed that Shi Mu was finally in a dangerous situation. Suddenly, Shi Mu's body transformed into several after-images in a flash. The after-images then merged together as one the next moment. But, Shi Mu stood still on his original place. It seemed that he hadn't moved from his place at all. The tip of the black blade in the 9th master's hand had pierced Shi Mu's clothes. But, it couldn't go any further. Suddenly, a bloody hole appeared in the 9th master's throat. It couldn't be determined when and how it had happened. Blood spurted out of the hole like an arrow. His mouth was half open, and his throat was issuing strange noises. Then, the expressions in his eyes subsided, and his body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Meanwhile, the old elder's body was forced back. Bang! A stuffy sound echoed. Then, he heavily got knocked against the walls of the hall. He then stumbled, and fell to the ground. The sword in his hand broke down into 2 pieces. He now held the broken half of the sword in his hand. The clothes on his chest had been shattered into pieces, the soft golden armor under his robe had been exposed now. There were deep chopping scars on the surface of the soft armor. Suddenly, traces of blood appeared on the edges of his mouth, and his face became overwhelmed with shock. Golden armor, humph! Shi Mu quickly hid the fine black scales on his left hand and sneered. Everyone from the Jin family was about to move into action after these 2 men. But, the 9th master and the elder had already been defeated. So, the other people stayed at their original spots. The head of Jin family is so mediocre. He's even inferior to Wu Liang of the Wu family. Shi Mu looked towards the old elder and smiled scornfully. He then said. Traces of fear flashed through the elder's eyes. He couldn't understand how Shi Mu had attacked him with his own sword. He finally realized the gap between his and Shi Mu's capabilities. Suddenly, Shi Mu looked at him. The old elder looked like a rat that was being closely watched by a cobra. His heart shuddered. You, what do you want? The old elder of the Jin family looked a little sad. He asked in a husky voice. Don't worry, I haven't come to the Feng city with an intention to murder you. I've come to meet Aunt Zhen, Shi Mu replied in a dull tone. The eldest master of the Jin family sent out men without even waiting for the elder's orders. I don't wish to see the faces of you people. Get out of here. Shi Mu strode towards the main seat in the hall, and sat down. He then said in a heavy voice. In fact, his words had seemed a bit anxious in their make. Chapter 189, Leaving. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. The men of the Jin family were trembling with fear. They didn't dare to object to Shi Mu's order. They were so desperate to get out of the hall that they were cursing their parents for bringing them into this world with only 2 legs. They struggled with each other as they tried to get out of the hall at the earliest. Even the master of the Jin family wasn't an exception. He picked up the dead body of the 9th master, and exited the hall. The elder lent his support to the master of the Jin family. Then, he too left the hall. After that, he arrived in the middle of the courtyard. He looked in the direction of the hall with an ugly expression on his face. A terrified look flashed across his eyes. The other members of the Jin family noticed that the elder and the master of the Jin hadn't yet departed the vicinity. They looked at each other in dismay. But, they had no alternative but to wait outside. Shi Mu sat alone in the hall. He closed his eyes to rest. A sound of light and graceful footsteps was heard from outside after a short period of time. Shi Mu opened his eyes as he heard the sound. Then, Aunt Zhen's silhouette appeared at the gateway of the hall. Shi Mu hadn't seen Aunt Zhen for several years, but her appearance hadn't changed much in these years. Her face looked colorless and sallow owing to the house arrest. Shi Mu couldn't even determine her qi at first. Aunt Zhen. Shi Mu quickly stood up. Are you really Shi Mu? Aunt Zhen came close to Shi Mu, and sized him up. She still couldn't believe that Shi Mu stood in front of him. She then asked in a hesitant manner. Shi Mu was 14 or 15 years old when he had left the Feng city. Now, he was around 20 years old. Moreover, he had had a number of experiences in the Black Demon sect and the Barbarian Wasteland. So, his stature and skin color had greatly changed. No wonder Aunt Zhen couldn't recognize him. Aunt Zhen. It's me. You had to suffer all these years because of me. I feel extremely apologetic in my heart, Shi Mu grinned and replied in an apologetic tone. Silly child, I feel that I owe you something because I couldn't protect you from whatever happened back then. Fortunately, your misfortune has turned into a blessing. Otherwise, how would I have faced your father in the heaven? Aunt Zhen shook her head and sighed. Then, both of them exchanged greetings. They got along with each other quite well. Aunt Zhen asked Shi Mu about his life in the past few years. Shi Mu didn't hide anything, and told her about his experiences during the past years. Aunt Zhen became more and more astonished as she continued to listen to Shi Mu's stories. She had never thought that Shi Mu would experience so many things in the short span of a few years. His cultivation had reached the Houtian advanced stage, while she was a Houtian consummate level warrior. However, her strength still wasn't much in comparison to his. That's right. Is Sister Yu Huan at home right now? Shi Mu asked after a short while. Yu Huan got admitted into the Kai Yuan martial arts school shortly after you left. She hasn't returned home since the past 2 or 3 years owing to the invasion of the barbarian race. Aunt Zhen's eyes seemed to be missing her daughter as she spoke. Aunt Zhen, it seems that you're not aware that the human and barbarian races have formed an alliance. So, there'll be no war between these two races for some time. Sister Yu Huan may come back to see you soon, Shi Mu told her after he had given it some thought. The news of the human and barbarian races forming an alliance hadn't been officially announced in public as yet. So, Aunt Zhen was startled as she heard the news. Then, her face exposed a gratified look. Shi Mu then took out several magic charms, a jade bottle, and a long green whip from his bosom. He handed them over to Aunt Zhen. Aunt Zhen stared blankly at him. Aunt Zhen, I was just passing through Feng City. I'll not stay here for too long. There are some element tempering pills in this bottle. They'll help you make a progress with your cultivation. There are also a few magic charms, and a magic tool that you can use, Shi Mu said with a smile. The element tempering pills were strong cultivation pills that Shi Mu had obtained from the barbarian race. They were extremely useful for Houtian martial arts, and were similar to bone tempering pills. A complex expression appeared on Aunt Zhen's face. She hesitated a little. Then, she received the bottle and opened its lid. A faint sweet smell hit her face. Her expression changed as the real qi undulated in her body. After that, she picked up the magic charms and the green whip and started to inspect them. She was shocked. The magic charms provided by Shi Mu were low-level charms, but their price was extremely high. The Jin family was very rich, but it couldn't afford to possess these many low-level magic charms at the same time. The long green whip was a magic tool that had been refined in the fierce snake tribe. It was almost equivalent to a middle-level magic tool. There were very few magic tools in the Jin family. However, they didn't possess a single magic tool of this level. These things are extremely precious. You should take them back. Your Aunt Zhen can't accept them. Aunt Zhen handed the things back to Shi Mu. She then said, Aunt Zhen, you don't need to be formal with me. These things are precious, but they aren't much useful to me now. Don't worry, and just accept them, Shi Mu smiled and replied. If that's the case, then I'll receive them. Aunt Zhen hesitated a little. But then, she received those things. Shi Mu smiled faintly. Then, he thought of something and said with a dull expression, Aunt Zhen, there's one matter about which I need your help. Tell me. Your Aunt Zhen will help you as long as she can. Is it possible that Aunt Zhen would bother to help me in distributing these belongings among the families of the members of the Golden Dragon Gang? Shi Mu took out a silver note and golden foliage from his bosom, and handed them over to Aunt Zhen. He then told Aunt Zhen about the matter of the Golden Dragon Gang and the Wu family. Shi Mu had murdered a large number of people. He was under the control of Feng Li's necklace while murdering those people, but he had killed those people with his own hands. The people of the Wu family were guilty and deserved the punishment. The Golden Dragon Gang was usually tyrannical, but they weren't guilty to deserve the death punishment. Now, their families were full of orphans and widows. Shi Mu decided to do his best to compensate their loss. He had thought about it, and decided that only Aunt Zhen was suitable for this job. Aunt Zhen's expressions changed. She then nodded in agreement. Thank you so much, Aunt Zhen. Shi Mu felt relaxed in his heart. He then smiled gratefully, and stood up. Shi Mu, are you going to leave? Aunt Zhen seemed unwilling to let him go. Yes, Aunt Zhen. I hope to see you again. Take care. Shi Mu nodded. He then cupped his hands in greeting towards Aunt Zhen, and took a step forward towards the exit of the hall. The people of the Jin family were still gathered at the gate of the courtyard. Their expressions changed as they saw that Shi Mu was coming out. I'm sparing you for the sake of Aunt Zhen. I'll come back if I ever come to know that you dared to direct your anger against Aunt Zhen and Yu Huan. I'll come back even if I am at the other end of the earth. Then, I won't let you go easily, like I did today. Shi Mu swept his vision towards the people present on the spot. After that, his vision fell on the elder. He then said coldly. The master of Jin family was terrified, he agreed immediately. The elder didn't say anything. The rest of the men also agreed as they saw this. Shi Mu turned around to look towards Aunt Zhen through the gate and nodded. Then, his figure flashed, and jumped on the wall. After that, he faded away into the distance. A black carriage left Feng City half an hour later. Shi Mu turned around and looked towards the city. It was almost dusk. The afterglow of the setting sun made the entire city look dim-sighted with a layer of golden light. Shi Mu seemed to be in low spirits. He soon turned back his head. His intersection with the people of Feng City would be lesser and lesser as he'd journey farther and farther in his pursuit of martial arts. Suddenly, Shi Mu's heart felt a sense of loneliness. He had never felt like this before. He raised the tip of his brow, and looked towards a barren hill in the vicinity of the road. He could faintly see a shabby and old temple on the hilltop. An unusual color appeared in Shi Mu's eyes. This was the same temple where he had met Zhongxiu and her father for the first time. Zhongxiu's figure appeared in his mind. He hadn't seen her since he had left for his journey in a hurry. Shi Mu remained motionless for a moment. He then shook the reins of his horses, and changed the direction of his carriage. After that, he headed in the southwest direction towards the wonderful sound sect. It was night. The carriage was parked in a wilderness. A pair of dark horses was tethered to an old tree. Shi Mu exposed an exhausted expression on his face, and sat down on a huge stone. Shi Mu's cultivation made it impossible for him to get tired so easily. But, he felt excessively drained owing to the influence of the evil spirit that had infiltrated his body during the daytime. Shi Mu took out a pill. He was about to consume it when his vision fell on the surrounding wilderness. He then wrinkled his eyebrows. This place was far away from the city. However, it couldn't be said that there's no danger here. Suddenly, the thought of Yan Luo crossed Shi Mu's mind. He didn't know why it had happened. Then, a feeling of guilt welled up in his heart. Yan Luo had blocked a fatal blow and had been seriously injured that day in the forbidden area of the portal of the brave warriors while fighting with the three-headed ominous beast. After that, Shi Mu had left the forbidden area. Then, he had removed the curse. He had forgotten about Yan Luo in a rush to flee from the forbidden area. Shi Mu mumbled to himself as this thought crossed his mind. He then waved his hand. Then, a black fog appeared on the ground in front of him. After that, a human skeleton slowly appeared out of the fog. The skeleton was dressed in a white armor made up of bones. It was holding a bone spear in his hand. 2 sky blue flames were flickering in its eye sockets. Shi Mu was surprised. This skeleton didn't look like the old Yan Luo. But, the spirit mark engraved by Shi Mu was present on its body. Yan Luo. Shi Mu called out in an uncertain manner. Yan Luo seemed to have clearly heard what Shi Mu had said. It slanted its head, and sized him up for a few minutes. Then, its figure disappeared. It appeared in front of Shi Mu the next moment, and hugged Shi Mu. Shi Mu was surprised. Real qi raged up in his body. He was just about to push Yan Luo away. Suddenly, Yan Luo tightened its grip on his body. It seemed to have no intention to attack him even though it was hugging him tightly. Its bony arms were only holding Shi Mu in a casual embrace. A doubt emerged in Shi Mu's heart. Yan Luo had never behaved in this manner before. Moreover, it had never reacted with such a fast speed. Shi Mu couldn't understand what had happened to Yan Luo after its fight with the three-headed ominous python. He was about to push Yan Luo away in order to examine it carefully. Suddenly, Yan Luo loosened its arms from his body. It then withdrew, and appeared several feet away. Shi Mu touched his waist, and realized that the beast soul bag suspended around his waist was missing. It was now in Yan Luo's hand. The soul flames flickered a few times in Yan Luo's eye sockets. It then pulled open the bag of beast souls, opened its mouth, and issued an attractive force. The light balls of the beast souls started to flow out of the bag into Yan Luo's mouth. The blue color of Yan Luo's soul flames changed as it continued to swallow the beast souls. Its color seemed to have deepened from before. Yan Luo looked into the sky, and issued a long and noiseless whistle after it had consumed half of the beast souls. Suddenly, its body started to emit a formidable aura that started to spread in the surroundings. This aura aroused a strong airflow. The dust rolled up on the ground, even the stones were sent flying. Shi Mu looked greatly surprised. Yan Luo's aura was tremendous. It had already reached the Xian level. Shi Mu couldn't understand how Yan Luo, a small skeleton, had reached the Xian level in the dead spirit world. Shi Mu couldn't believe it. But, the aura emitted by Yan Luo's body was real. Chapter 190, Presenting Fruit as a Gift. Translator, Novel Saga Editor, Novel Saga. All the beast souls captured by Shi Mu from the Crowhorn tribe had been gobbled up by Yan Luo within a few breaths' time. The blue soul flames in Yan Luo's eyes flickered, and then stabilized. Its soul flames seemed to have gained some strength. Moreover, their color had turned into sky blue. A layer of faint radiance emerged on the surface of the bone spear in Yan Luo's hand. The spearhead was glistening with a dazzling yet cold luminescence, as if it had grown more incisive than before. In addition, a few charm characters were carved on its surface. They looked like earthworms. Shi Mu couldn't comprehend the situation clearly. Yan Luo was a human skeleton whom he had always neglected. He couldn't even comprehend when Yan Luo had made such a wonderful attainment, and had advanced to the Xian realm. It had even surpassed Shi Mu in terms of its cultivation level. Now, Yan Luo had swallowed up a number of beast souls. And, it didn't seem to be far from breaking through the middle stage of the Xian realm. The beast souls from Shi Mu's bag had disappeared at the time when he had woken up in front of the three-headed python cave's entrance. And, Shi Mu had now come to realize that Yan Luo must have consumed the beast souls he had gathered back then. The soul flames in Yan Luo's eyes had become tranquil by this time. It took a step forward, and walked to Shi Mu's side. After that, it hung the beast soul bag back on his waist. However, it continued to fumble with Shi Mu's waist, as if it wanted to find something else. "There's nothing else. All the beast souls have already been consumed by you," Shi Mu said in a dumbfounded tone as he prevented Yan Luo from further exploration. He didn't seem to know if he should laugh or cry. Shi Mu even pushed Yan Luo a few times. Yan Luo finally gave up. It shook its wandering head, and then stood to one side. Shi Mu had kept these beast souls in order to make progress in the secret totem technique. He needed to refine these beast souls and transform them into his own energy so that they could easily be absorbed by his sealed totem. He had planned to wait until his cultivation had got promoted as required. After that, he had to enhance the strength of the three-headed python totem with the help of those beast souls. Unfortunately, all the beast souls had been devoured by Yan Luo. Shi Mu sighed. Suddenly, his flickering gaze gleamed with a pleasantly surprised look. Yan Luo had forged its way into the Xian-Tian realm. This signified that it had become a formidable support for Shi Mu. After all, the strength of the contract still existed. It seemed that Yan Luo could enhance its strength at an alarming rate through the absorption of beast souls. Moreover, it didn't require to refine the beast souls into energy. Therefore, Shi Mu could hunt more ominous beast souls, and collect their souls for Yan Luo's rapid growth. Then, he could help Yan Luo to quickly escalate its strength by absorbing the collected beast souls. Shi Mu arrived in front of Yan Luo, and established a communication with it through his mind. Yan Luo had already attained the strength of a Xian-Tian primary stage warrior. But, its intelligence didn't seem to have made a progress. Its intelligence was still at the level of a 6 or a 7-year-old kid. However, Shi Mu succeeded in pulling out some fragmented information from Yan Luo's mind. He put those scattered pieces together, and perceived the way through which Yan Luo had stepped into the Xian-Tian realm. It was now clear to Shi Mu that Yan Luo had achieved this feat mostly through the consumption of souls. Shi Mu interacted with Yan Luo through his mind. But, he became exhausted after some time. He then sat down cross-legged, and instructed Yan Luo to keep a watch on his magic weapons. After that, he began to practice. Now, Shi Mu didn't have to worry about anything since he had Yan Luo, a Xian-Tian warrior, by his side. The night passed away quickly. Shi Mu opened his eyes as the color of the sky resumed its brightness. His eyes were emitting two cold lights. He then adjusted his breathing as he had been sitting in meditation for the entire night. His body supplemented the black qi that had eroded due to over-extraction. His cultivation had also made a little progress. Yan Luo still stood calmly to one side while holding the spear in its hand. Shi Mu was about to stand up, but he felt slightly giddy, as if a spell of dizziness had been cast upon his consciousness. He smiled wryly at the thought that Yan Luo had become a Xian-Tian warrior. So, summoning it to this world required an enormous consumption of Shi Mu's spiritual power. Moreover, his spiritual power wouldn't be able to endure if he still tried to hold Yan Luo here for a few hours. He waved his hand to make Yan Luo return to the dead spirit world. After that, he remained seated with his legs crossed for some more time. Then, he forged ahead towards the wonderful sound sect. After half a month, in the Chen prefecture of the Dachi kingdom, in the depths of Lingshang mountains, Shi Mu looked towards the two purple mountain peaks in front of him. They were shrouded in a layer of purple mist. He felt a fit of fluctuation in his heart. He retracted his vision after a moment. He then strode in the direction of the left purple peak. The mountain road was narrow and very difficult to tread on. Therefore, Shi Mu abandoned his horse cart before he entered the depths of the purple Lingshang mountains. He carried the bundle of leather on his back, and tied up the meteoric iron to his left arm. He finally arrived at the foot of the mountain after some time. He looked up only to see the cloud of purple mist everywhere. There was a 10 feet wide bluestone mountain road that meandered all the way to the top of the mountain. There was a wooden pavilion on the roadside. 2 green silhouettes could be seen sitting in the pavilion. But, it was hard to see them clearly as the entire area was shrouded in a cloud of mist. Shi Mu kept walking. He proceeded towards them along the mountain road. The 2 green silhouettes sprang up as Shi Mu arrived closer to the pavilion. Their statures rose and fell a few times before they arrived in front of him, and blocked his way. The 2 silhouettes turned out to be 2 girls who were dressed in the Heavenly Sound sex uniform. One of them was a 15 or 16-year-old girl. She looked extremely beautiful. The other one was a tall girl. She was also pretty, but her lips were slightly thinner. The aura around these 2 maidens didn't seem formidable. They were probably at the primary stage of the Houtian realm. Stop right there. This is the entrance to the Heavenly Sound sect. Everyone isn't allowed to climb up the mountain. The beautiful girl stretched out her left hand, and shouted at Shi Mu in a commanding tone. I'm Shi Mu, a disciple of the Black Demon sect. I've come here to look for a female disciple. Her name is Zhongxiu. I would request the 2 of you to let me pass. Shi Mu stopped and replied with a faint smile. Taking Lady Zhong's name is a taboo. How can you speak her name so casually? Moreover, not everyone can meet her, the girl with thin lips retorted before the beautiful girl could speak anything. Shi Mu was dumbstruck as he heard the words Lady Zhong. Suddenly, he remembered the matter pertaining to her entry in the sect. Ye Hongyao had once mentioned this matter before him. So, he felt relieved in his heart. This is the order token of the 7 sex union. It's very important for me to meet her. So, you must look for your Lady Zhong. Shi Mu pulled out a 7-angled purplish golden token from his bosom, and said lightly. So, Brother Shi is the union's messenger. In that case, please come along with me to the mountains. The girl with thin lips twitched the tips of her eyebrows and said. The eyes of the beautiful girl brightened up. She quickly shot a meaningful glance at the thin-lipped girl. The beautiful girl pulled the other girl close to her, and whispered a few words in her ear. She then turned around, and flashed a faint smile towards Shi Mu. After that, she took the lead and proceeded to climb up the mountain. The girl with thin lips looked towards Shi Mu in an awkward manner and smiled. After that, she returned to the pavilion. But, Shi Mu remained expressionless. He quietly received the order token, and put it in his bosom. After that, he followed after the beautiful girl, and started to climb up the mountain. An antique welcome pavilion appeared on the roadside after a short while. Brother Shi Mu, I admit that I didn't act sensibly, and neglected you. Anyways, you take some rest here. As you know, Lady Zhong commands a very honorable position. So, let this little girl go and inform her first. The girl led Shi Mu towards the welcome pavilion. She then turned around, and spoke in an apologetic tone. No problem, Shi Mu replied with a faint smile. Both of them had arrived at the pavilion whilst talking. The girl smiled at Shi Mu, and then departed. Shi Mu sat down in the pavilion in a calm and comfortable manner. He leisurely swept his vision towards the mountains. He could faintly see the summit of the Purple Palace and numerous lofty flying bridges. A green silhouette hurriedly swept down the mountain's top after a while, and proceeded towards the direction of the pavilion. Then, an exceptionally pretty maiden appeared outside the pavilion. Her skin was snowy white in color. She looked at Shi Mu with a happy expression on her face. The maiden had long and dark hair that was gracefully floating in the wind. The black shade of her elegant eyebrows looked natural on her face. A pair of beautiful eyes looking as bright as limpid autumn water had the power to even arouse the soul of a dead. Her jade-like refined nose stood erect on her pretty face. Her pure white oval face seemed extremely delicate and graceful like a piece of snow. Moreover, her perfectly sketched and slender figure looking like a willow tree bore a resemblance to a heavenly fairy. You're Zhongxiu? Where's the birthmark on your forehead? Shi Mu was dumbfounded. He asked subconsciously. The space between her eyebrows resembled that of Zhongxiu's. Otherwise, Shi Mu wouldn't have believed that this incomparably pretty girl was the shy and feeble little girl from his past. Brother Shi, I'm Zhongxiu. I've learnt the art of 1,000 jade sound waves from my master. The birthmark gradually disappeared from my forehead as I started to practice it. What's the matter? Do I look ugly? A hint of happiness flashed across her pupils as she saw Shi Mu's expression. She took 3 or 4 steps forward, and entered the pavilion. She then sat down beside Shi Mu, and replied with a playful smile. It's nothing like that. Sister Zhong looked very gorgeous back then. Now, she looks even more beautiful like an angel. I almost didn't recognize you. I had never expected that you would make your way to the Houtian consummate stage within a few years. You should now let your brother catch up with you, ah. Shi Mu quickly resumed his composure. He sensed that this girl's cultivation had already advanced to the Houtian consummate stage. So, he touched his nose and spoke. He. My elder brother Shi is already too fierce to deal with. I heard that you had been to the barbarians' forbidden area in order to help Princess Huowu to form an alliance with the barbarians. You helped in resolving such a big crisis of our race. You've indeed made a remarkable contribution. You've now become a celebrity within the 7 big sects. Zhongxiu giggled while gazing at the extraordinary splendor in Shi Mu's eyes. He. That was just a lucky move, that I made in desperation, Shi Mu smiled bitterly, and replied while shaking his head. Zhongxiu was surprised. She wanted to ask more to get a better clarity. But, she didn't dig into the details as she noticed Shi Mu's reluctance to recount this incident. Suddenly, her eyes fell on something. She stretched out her hand to pick up the fallen leaf from Shi Mu's shoulder. Shi Mu subconsciously flicked his body backwards to avoid the touch. The fallen leaf floated in the air, and fell on the ground. Zhongxiu's hand stopped in midair. Suddenly, an air of awkwardness pervaded the pavilion. Lady Zhong, Oh, by the way, Brother Shi, I once went to the Black Turtle sect to look for you. But, I came to know that a group of disciples had been kidnapped by the Black Demon sect of the neighboring country on that day. Zhongxiu calmly retracted her hand, and said with a faint smile. Shi Mu was moved as he heard these words. Then, a string of past events began to flow in their conversation. There was an awkwardness between them as they had met each other after a long time. But, that wall of awkwardness soon melted away. Then, intermittent bursts of laughter and giggles began to resound in the pavilion. Brother Shi, both of us have now joined a sect, and have officially become the part of the martial arts world. But, the happiest moments of my life were when we lived together in the Jin's mansion. By the way, what's your next plan? Zhongxiu's beautiful eyes turned as she said in a spooky manner. To be honest, there's a girl whom I admire a lot. I don't know her name yet. But, she once said that I can go to look for her once I break through the Xiantian realm before turning 30 years old. So, I'll return to my sect, and devote more time to practice, Shi Mu replied while scratching his head. So, that's how it is, then I would like to give Brother Shi my best wishes to step into the Xiantian realm, and then happily embrace the beauty he admires. I too have to attack the bottleneck of the Xiantian realm soon. So, I don't know when we'll meet again. Zhongxiu's elegant eyes revealed a trace of gloominess. She then said with a smile on her face. Oh, that's right. This matter has almost slipped my mind. Lady Zhong, this is for you. This would help you in breaking through the bottleneck of the Xiantian realm. Shi Mu tapped his head. Then, he pulled out a fist-sized fruit from his bosom, and passed it to her. Brother Shi, don't tell me that it's the green frost fruit. It's such a precious thing. You should keep it for your practice. I really don't need it. Zhongxiu was startled. She then said. Lady Zhong, you can accept it. I have one more with me. Shi Mu flashed a smile and fished out another green frost fruit from his clothes. This. Brother Shi, thank you so much. A hint of redness bloomed across Zhongxiu's charming face as she saw another fruit. Shi Mu felt relieved. Zhongxiu was doing a lot better than what he had expected. Shi Mu conversed with her for some more time. He then bid her farewell, and set out on his journey. Lady Zhongxiu remained seated in the pavilion for some time. She pressed the green frost fruit against her chest. And, her beautiful pupils became hazy as she looked at Shi Mu's departing figure.